Chapter 81. Boy, hearing Nangong's words, Li Yang fell into a deep melancholy for a while. Although you and I have known each other for only a short time in my long life, you still understand me. However, you still understood me and understood what I wanted. I thought that after the person who fought side by side with me died, no one can be like me anymore. But... very good. Very good. I'm not alone anymore. As Li Yang spoke, tears began to form in her eyes. Her pair of tiger eyes have faded away from the usual majesty and domineering aura. Instead, they were filled with helplessness and relief. Nangongja slightly raised the corner of his mouth and said with a little bit of ridicule. A dignified man like you actually made a little girl's attitude. Li Yang, you really made me look down on you. It's just going to a secret realm outside this world, what's there to be afraid of? Although Nangongja said it simply, the danger is self-evident. Since Li Yang has just begun to deduce the space array, it can be said that the place where the Lion clan lives should be like Mount Myaboku, Shikatsu Forest, and the Earth Dragon Cave. It's independent of the ninja world, but it's attached to the ninja world. Because now Li Yang just listened to a few words of the great sage and speculated about the Lion clan's habitat. If the great immortal toad had some ulterior motives, he would modify the formation slightly. Then, if the person who entered the formation was lucky, they would be exiled into a crack in space. If the person was unlucky, there was a high possibility that they would be sucked into a spatial storm. Not to mention the bones, even the soul will be torn apart in an instant. This can be said to be a very risky business. Everyone says that they can sacrifice themselves, but since ancient times, the easiest thing is death, and the most difficult thing is death. People will die for some seemingly small reasons. So, death is easy. However, when a person knew that his actions would most likely lead him to his death and that there was another way to survive, it would be extremely difficult for him to do so. How many people are willing to die? So, death is the most difficult thing. Boy, you can rest assured. I will try my best to deduce this array and try to find the loopholes and unstable factors in it, so that this operation can be carried out smoothly. But, you also have to be prepared. Although spatial rifts and spatial storms were traps that could destroy a person's body and soul, they were still very powerful. But there is also the power of nature. If you can rely on your own strength to summon a stronger force of nature, then you will be able to save my own life. Li Yang said these words to Nangongja very seriously, then turned around and waved his hand. The array that had just dissipated instantly reappeared, and a pair of eyes stared closely at some of the minute details of the array. No longer talked to Nangongja. Nangongja also understood Li's mood, so he didn't say anything more. Instead, he quietly left the spiritual space and left this place to Li Yang so that he could deduce in peace. But then he thought of his younger sister, Mashiro, and Ling-er. Nangongja suddenly felt a headache coming on. How long had it been peaceful? He had to leave the wood leaf again. He might even encounter a lot of danger. Nangongja didn't know how to explain it to Nangongro. He opened the door to the courtyard, and the white moonlight shone into Nangongja's room. The burst of natural energy last time had caused the spring in the courtyard to continue. Therefore, the cherry blossom tree in the middle of the courtyard was still blooming with cherry blossoms. The faint smell of cherry blossoms slowly drifted into Nangongja's nose. Phew, Nangongja let out a long breath. He picked up the black sword beside him, wore a loose bathrobe, and stepped into the courtyard. Whenever his mood was fluctuating, and there was no one to talk to, Nangongja would often practice his sword to sort out his chaotic mind. Nangongja didn't use his internal strength, but because of his physical strength and the speed of his sword. Waves of wind were produced involuntarily. The cherry blossoms broke away from their receptacles, and the petals scattered. One petal after another drifted in the air. The heavens seemed to have sensed Nangongja's mood. Pieces of slightly cold snowflakes drifted down from the sky. The cherry blossom petals and the snowflakes intertwined in the air, dancing together. The cherry blossom color and the pure white of the snowflakes harmonized together. Such a scene that defied the laws of nature actually happened in the courtyard of the Nangong residence without a sound. Nangongja tried his best to empty his mind. He could only practice his sword. Sometimes he waved it, sometimes he stabbed it. Sometimes he cut it, sometimes he cut it. They were all very simple moves. However, simple did not mean powerless. Any Chunin would be killed in an instant in front of such swordsmanship. After an unknown period of time, the moon, which was originally in the middle of the sky, slowly approached the horizon. The sun seemed to be climbing up from the eastern horizon. The sun and the moon seemed to exist in the sky at the same time, resonating with each other. The sun and the moon were shining together at this moment. Nangongja also stopped waving his sword. He raised his hand and tossed the black sword into the air. The black sword was firmly inserted into the scabbard beside him. "Ruru, come out. After so many years, I didn't notice you peeping at me." Nangongja looked at the corner of the room, knowing that his sister was hiding there. "You know that you can find me every time. Can't you let me think that you can't find me?" Nangong Ro, who was also wearing pajamas, walked out from the corner of the room. She muttered something in her mouth. "Ruru." Nangongja did not answer Nangong Ro. He just reached for the black sword beside him and stepped into the corridor of the room. However, just as Nangongja was about to say something, Nangong Ro reached out a finger and pressed Nangongja's mouth. Nangong Ro shook her head and blinked her big eyes. She looked at her brother standing in front of her with a bit of heartache and pity. "After so many years, brother, you have sacrificed a lot for me to live a good life. Although I don't know everything, I know at least 70 to 80% of it. These days, brother, although you have been happily accompanying me, Sister Mashiro, and little Linger to live a normal life. But I know that brother, you don't belong here. You still yearn for a life full of possibilities, a life full of passion. So, go. This home will always be here, waiting for you. When you are tired, you can come here and have a good rest." After Nangong Ro finished speaking, she pulled Nangongja and walked into the room. "It snowed last night, and it seems a lot colder outside. Let's go make breakfast for Sister Mashiro and little Linger, shall we?" After hearing his sister's words, Nangongja could only nod and smile. "Okay, let's go make breakfast." Chapter 82. Nangongja was sitting quietly in his room. His surroundings were silent, and only the faint sound of Nangongja's breathing could be heard from time to time. The black sword was quietly placed in front of Nangongja, emitting its own light. It was obvious that Nangongja had been polishing this sword recently. "Kacha," the door to Nangongja's room was opened. A burly figure could only be vaguely seen under the sunlight outside the door. "Kid. The formation is ready, it's time for us to leave." The voice was mighty and deep. That's right, it was Nangongja's familiar, Li Yang, in human form. After Nangongja practiced his sword that night, Nangongja clearly explained to Nangong Ro what he was going to do. Nangongja thought that his sister would definitely stop him from doing such a dangerous thing. However, to Nangongja's surprise, Nangong Ro did not say anything. She just turned around and left. For the past few days, even when Nangongja summoned Li Yang to carve a formation in their courtyard, Nangong Ro did not say anything. She just watched quietly, which made Nangongja slightly worried. Humans. What a strange creature. You don't want your loved ones to stop you from doing dangerous things, but when your loved ones don't stop you, you start to worry about your gains and losses. This subtle state of mind reverberated in Nangongja's mind for a long time. Okay. Nangongja picked up the black sword in front of him and followed Li Yang into the courtyard. His sister, Mashiro, and little Linger all stood at the edge of the formation, watching Nangongzhe and Li Yang walk over. "Brother," Nangongzhe looked at her brother, as if she wanted to say something. However, she swallowed all the words that were about to come out of her mouth. There was only one sentence left: "Come back alive." Hearing his sister's request and the eager gazes from Mashiro and little Linger, Nangongzhe felt a chill down his spine. For a moment, Nangongzhe actually had the thought of not following Li Yang into the secret realm. However, very quickly, Nangongzhe suppressed this feeling deep in his heart. This was the strongest desire that Li Yang expressed to him since his life was connected to him. He had no reason to stop him, nor should he. Without Yang's help, Nangongzhe would have died to death. "Until return, I'll come back safely. Don't forget that I can now draw on the power of nature. Some dangers are nothing to me." As Nangongzhe spoke, he nodded at his sister, Mashiro, and little Linger. Looking at his brother's gaze, Nangongzhe didn't know what to say. He could only look at Nangongzhe without saying anything. "Li Yang, protect me. Let's give it a try together," Nangongzhe said to Li Yang. "Of course. No matter how difficult it is, you and I will go together. This is the rule set by our contract." Before Li Yang's voice fell, his body began to slowly dissipate, turning into a black stream of light that wrapped around Nangongzhe's body. The black armor slowly revealed itself. The black armor now seemed to be very different from when Nangongzhe first summoned it. The armor that was originally as bright as a mirror was now filled with cracks. Some of the cracks were very small, so it was hard to notice. However, some of the cracks were very large, as wide as a finger. Some of these cracks were distributed in insignificant areas, while others were distributed in fatal areas. Moreover, the more fatal the areas were, the denser the cracks. Nangongzhe hadn't summoned this black armor for a long time, but all the cracks on it reminded Nangongzhe of every difficult battle he had gone through. "Heaven and earth, heed my command." Nangongzhe raised his black sword, and a mysterious sword mark left behind a few traces in the air. There seemed to be some fluctuations around Nangongzhe. It was originally difficult to detect, but as Nangongzhe drew more and more sword marks in the air, the fluctuations became more and more intense. A storm seemed to quietly form around Nangongzhe. Whether it was air, light, or other things that could be detected or not, they all began to condense and compress around Nangongzhe. "Attach!" Nangongzhe ordered, and the magic circle in front of him began to spin violently. As it spun faster and faster, the magic circle became smaller and smaller. The originally huge magic circle slowly shrunk to the size of a person, and gradually approached Nangongzhe's body. Slowly, the magic circle began to merge with Nangongzhe's black armor. Originally, Nangongzhe's armor had many runes that emitted a faint blue light. When the magic circle completely merged with Nangongzhe's black armor, half of the runes on the black armor seemed to have been activated, and they emitted a brilliant light that was as bright as the Milky Way. The cracks on the armor slowly began to repair. The brilliance of the black armor also began to become brighter and brighter. It seemed to have reached a peak. Now, when the energy had accumulated to a certain extent, Nangongzhe heard Li Yang's voice in his mind. Nangongzhe naturally knew what Li Yang meant. This magic circle condensed a huge amount of Li Yang's power and allowed the Li Yang's power to resonate with the Lion Clan's power. This magic circle was used to locate the Lion Clan's location. The best power to activate the magic circle was undoubtedly the natural energy, which represented the power of the heavens and earth. Nangongzhe was controlling the natural energy to support himself, not only to give himself a boost, but also to use himself as a relay point to provide energy for the magic circle. Activate. Find the Lion Clan's key. Nangongzhe roared loudly, as if he was venting the excess natural energy in his body. He fiercely stabbed the black sword in his hand into the center of the magic circle. The runes on the magic circle were activated, emitting a green vitality, and spontaneously rotating. For a while, the light of the magic circle was pushed to the extreme, and a huge green beam of light went straight into the sky. It lasted for 3 minutes, and the huge force alarmed many Konoha ninjas to come here. But they only saw one of the Sannin, Jiraiya, standing in front of Nangongja's house. Everyone who came to investigate also tactfully went back. Nangongja. Such a huge amount of natural energy can be used by you. Such talent and power is simply terrifying. I hope you won't become the enemy of Woodleaf in the future. Jiraiya said, but he could only shake his head. Because Jiraiya found that he really couldn't do anything about such a thing. When the light beam dissipated, Jiraiya left Nangongja's house. A person with a bit of loss walked to a ward in Kiba Hospital, which was guarded by many Woodleaf ninjas. Chapter 83. The intense light made Nangongja dizzy and blurry for a while. When Nangongja could see the scene in front of him again, Nangongja found himself in a world that had transcended his own reality. It was a world that was completely different from Lu Li's. How to say it? It was like the points, lines, surfaces, and bodies of the world he had been living in. And all kinds of colors were no longer familiar to him. Looking around, Nangongja realized that it was different from the pure whiteness of his spiritual space. Instead, it seemed that all kinds of colors began to mix together. If he looked carefully in one direction, he would find that all the colors that he knew, or even those that he didn't know, were emerging from time to time. And around his body, there were also strands of transparent energy ribbons, fluttering and dancing. Li Yang. Is this outside the space? Nangongja murmured, as if he was talking to Li Yang, who was attached to his body and turned into a black armor, but it also seemed like he was talking to himself. No. To be precise, where we are now is in the gap between our shinobi world and other small worlds attached to it. It's like a thin film of a big soap bubble combined with a small soap bubble. If we really reach the outside of the space, then our body, our soul, and everything that can represent our existence will be shattered in less than an instant. Li Yang said very indifferently, as if she had been in such a gap in space more than once. Since you have been studying the formation for so long, how are we going to find the small world where the Lion clan lives? Nangongja didn't want to continue to discuss these topics about space with Li Yang, because with Nangongja's current level of knowledge, isn't it a bit too advanced? Things are always like this, the operation is very simple, but the real understanding is very difficult. It's like you have a computer, you also know the functions of the graphics card, memory, kernel, and many other things. But if you really want to describe their detailed structure, I believe that very few people can explain it clearly. However, computers are still man-made, there are always people who understand it. As for such a high-end topic like space, believe me, as long as you can discover even the slightest of secrets, it will be enough to benefit you and even the entire world for the rest of your life. Do you see the belt of light around your body? Li Yang said, these ribbons of light are actually a combination of the formation's power and natural energy. He is like a safety rope that keeps you in contact with the shinobi world without breaking away from it. They protect you from the pull of space, allowing you to stabilize your existence in the crevice of space. As Li Yang spoke, a dark purple energy belt appeared in front of Nangongja. The energy ribbon in front of you right now was made by me with my own strength. Catch it. It will take us to where we want to go. When Nangongja heard Li Yang's words, he opened his right hand and grabbed the purple ribbon. Nangongja felt an inexplicable attraction force acting on his body. As if he was swimming, Nangongja wandered in the strange sea of space crevice. However, the transparent energy ribbon around his body was constantly dissipating, and green or blue particles began to slowly drift away. Behind Nangongja, a long tail was left. Hurry up. The protection of the energy ribbon is not permanent. If we can't enter a stable space before the energy is exhausted, we will be dragged out of the space. As for the consequences? I believe that I have made it very clear, haven't I? Concentrate, it will make you move faster. Liang also reminded Nan Gongzhe in his ear how urgent and precious time was. I know. I will find the location of the Lion Clan space as soon as possible. After Nan Gongzhe responded to this sentence, the two didn't talk anymore. Because Liang also had to concentrate to find the traces of her clan. Just like that, the beautiful scenery became meaningless in the eyes of the two. They just buried their heads and did what they were supposed to do. The search continued. The light ribbons were still dissipating. In addition, the light ribbons were getting thinner and thinner. There were originally 40 to 50 ribbons tightly wrapped around Nan Gongzhe, but now there were only 6 left. As for the Lion Clan's small space, there was still no trace of it. Kid, after a long period of silence, Liang finally spoke. Her tone was full of disappointment and self-blame. It seems that today is not a good day. When Nan Gongzhe heard Liang's words, his whole body trembled. No. We have to continue searching. Nan Gongzhe shook his head and said firmly and persistently. Look at the light ribbons around you. We don't have much time. No matter how strong I am, I have lost my body and can't use my full strength. Moreover, in such a situation, even if I was at my peak, there is nothing I can do. Liang's words were very sincere, because Liang compared her understanding of the space with the current situation and couldn't find a way to break the situation. Nan Gongzhe didn't continue to hold the purple ribbons in his hand, which had become at least 3 times thinner than before. The light particles emitted from his body didn't know the anxiety in their hearts, and they were still emitting light. The light particles passed through Nan Gongzhe's coat, face, and left Nan Gongzhe's hair, floating to the corner of the space. Liang, at that time, I was just a kid who didn't know anything. You're just a brat with a bit of cleverness. You're the one who taught me what courage is. You're the one who allowed me to bravely face my responsibilities and the dangers that I'll face in the future. Without you, there is no me. We will survive, although I don't know where this confidence comes from. I believe that we will definitely find the habitat of the Lion Clan and can safely return to the ninja world. What we need to do now is not to give up. We are halfway through our journey. Keep going. Continue. Continue. In the gap of space, sound can't be transmitted, but at this moment, Nan Gongzhe's shout seems to have exceeded this limit, and the whole space seems to be trembling slightly under the roar of Nan Gongzhe. Outside of the attention of Nan Gongzhe and Liang, the black sword on Nan Gongzhe's back was emitting a burst of white brilliance at this moment. The brilliance also expanded in an instant until Nan Gongzhe's whole body was wrapped in it. Chapter 84. At this moment, Nan Gongzhe was in a daze, as if he was hit in the head by a heavy hammer, and his consciousness was blurred. His eyes looked as if they were glued together. Even with all his strength, he only managed to open a small crack. He could only vaguely see the darkness in front of him, and a faint blood-red shadow. Feeling his body, he found that he could no longer feel the weight of the black armor. Riang? Nan Gongzhe tried to summon his familiar, the black lion Liang, whose life was linked to his. But there was no response at all. Ugh! Nan Gongzhe used all the strength in his body and used his arms to turn himself from a collapsed state to a cross-legged state. Circulating the internal energy in his body, which was almost exhausted, he tried to restore a little vitality to his body. But the operation of his internal energy became extremely obscure, like a car stuck in a quagmire. He could only struggle slightly to move forward. It seems that this place is still outside the shinobi world. I can no longer feel the familiar natural energy that I can use. Nan Gongzhe circulated the internal energy in his body several times, relieving his tired spirit, and also allowing his body to move. Then he opened his eyes and began to check his condition. At this moment, the black armor that was originally attached to his body had disappeared without a trace. The lion seal that was attached to Riang's body was also covered with a layer of dim luster. As for the black sword that accompanied him for a long time, at this moment, it was inserted diagonally 2 feet in front of him. No matter what, I have to hold the black sword in my hand. Although my internal energy can't do much, I can still use it to increase my self-defense ability. Although in such a predicament, Nangongzhi didn't panic. Instead, he began to think about how to protect himself. Nangongzhi supported himself with his hands on the ground, and began to move himself little by little to the place where the black sword was. Obviously, the distance was only 2 feet, but Nangongzhi walked for a full 5 minutes to reach the black sword. "Old friend, it looks like I'll have to rely on you to get through this dangerous situation." Looking at the black sword in front of him, Nangongzhi could not help but shake his head as he muttered to himself with complicated emotions. As for the black sword, it was still stuck in the ground, waiting for its owner to pick it up again. Nangongzhi reached out his right hand and grasped the slightly rough hilt of the black sword. But at this moment, the black sword erupted with an intense brilliance, and the surrounding darkness seemed to be expelled by the brilliance of the black sword. However, what Nangongzhi did not expect was that the darkness around him was not the only thing that was expelled, but also him, the owner of the black sword. The powerful shockwave violently pushed Nangongzhi away. His already weak body landed heavily on the ground. A thin trace of blood appeared at the corner of Nangongzhi's mouth. This, Nangongzhi did not wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He only stared blankly at the black sword that had accompanied him on the battlefield day and night. "Thief, are you the one who touched my calamity sword?" A voice broke Nangongzhi's dazed state. Nangongzhi focused his gaze and saw a handsome young man wearing a blood-red robe standing next to the black sword that had sent him flying. "The calamity sword you're talking about is this black sword?" Nangongzhi probed. "Black sword?" When the man in blood red heard Nangongzhi's description of the black sword, he suddenly laughed out loud. "This sword was forged from a strange stone that I took from the Shikal forest. Its hilt, its sword guard, and its blade were all polished by me bit by bit. After I forged it, the heavens and earth seemed unable to tolerate it. Calamity lightning struck down and caused cracks to appear on its originally smooth body." The man in blood red seemed to recall the past. He pulled out the black sword and placed it horizontally in front of him. He used his fingers to gently touch the cracks on the black sword with a trace of regret and joy. "But I never thought that the calamity lightning would bestow this sword with a true soul. From then on, it became a spiritual sword that could communicate with the heavens and earth. It was the calamity lightning that forged it. It was the calamity lightning that created it. So I named it the calamity sword." A cool breeze blew over and lifted a few strands of hair in front of the man's face, revealing a pair of sword-like eyes. Cold stars seemed to surge in the depths of the man's eyes. Every glance was as sharp as a sword that was brandished. "How can you touch such a sword? How can you look down on it?" The man in blood red flicked his wrist. The black sword, or rather the calamity sword, carried a sharp sword aura as it pointed directly at Nangongzhi's throat. "He is your sword, but he is also my sword." Nangongzhi looked at the man in front of him. He had a few guesses about his identity. However, Nangongzhi did not back down. His words were firm. The man let out a low groan. An enormous murderous aura and blood aura surged from his body. The blood-red robe made clanking noises as if it was a suit of armor, reflecting a metallic luster. The blood aura and murderous aura slowly condensed into a picture behind the man. It was a sea of blood and corpses. Some people were struggling, some were screaming, and some were crying. However, standing beside these people were sinister and demonic figures. Azura. Blood Sea. Nangongzhi did not know why, but he actually said the name of the picture. "Oh. You are quite knowledgeable. This is the condensation of my murderous aura and blood aura. It is the Azura Blood Sea picture that can help me suppress living beings and kill my enemies. Since you know it, I might as well let you have a taste of it." The man in the blood-red robe was slightly surprised when he heard that Nangongzhi knew the picture. However, his gaze immediately returned to its original cold and fierce state. He waved the calamity sword. The Azura Blood Sea picture behind him seemed to have heard some instructions and suppressed Nangong's body. From afar, Nangongja looked like one of the living beings trapped in the Azura Blood Sea picture. He was drowned in the sea of blood and was tortured by the Azura. Cough cough, the thick blood aura seemed to have condensed and became extremely dense. After Nangongja breathed in some of it into his lungs, he began to cough heavily. His heart also seemed to be suppressed by some kind of force. It felt like it was being pricked by a needle. Waves of pain came from it. Everyone is born with sin. The Azura Blood Sea picture will calculate a person's various sins one by one. Then, it will use the sin as a power to suppress the person suppressed within. As long as you have this sin, you will always be suppressed in the sea of blood. You will never be able to escape. The man in the blood-red robe's cold eyes seemed to carry some pity as he looked at Nangongja, who was trapped in the Azura Blood Sea picture. He took out a gourd from his back and poured a scarlet liquid into his mouth. Chapter 85. As the blood energy surged into Nangongja's body, Nangongja's consciousness began to blur. His entire body became extremely sleepy. Just a little bit more and Nangongja would fall into a deep sleep. But just as Nangongja was about to lose consciousness, a hand grabbed onto Nangongja's ankle. In an instant, Nangongja's sleepy consciousness became clear. He was surrounded by a blood-red ocean. That's right, it was an ocean. Half of his body was submerged in this blood-red, viscous ocean. Nangongja forcefully kicked his leg upwards, flinging away the person who was grabbing onto his ankle. The person in front of Nangongja could no longer be considered a person. Half of his head had been cut off diagonally. The yellow and white matter inside scattered into the air with the force of Nangongja's kick. His fleshless mouth opened, emitting a hoarse voice. Nangongja. Yama. Do you remember me? That's right, you wouldn't remember a small pawn like me. I'm just someone who had half his head chopped off by you. I used to be a coward, but now, there are countless people like me coming to find you. It wasn't hard to tell from the words of the withered corpse that this person was one of the people he had killed. Nangongja indeed had no recollection of such a person. Come out. My companions. The withered corpse stretched out his arms, and a huge blood-red wave appeared behind him. Within the blood-red wave were many withered corpses that had either been stabbed in the heart or had lost an arm or a leg. They bared their teeth and pounced on Nangongja. Some grabbed onto Nangongja's arm, while others grabbed onto Nangongja's leg. Anything that could be grabbed was grabbed by these withered corpses. Some of the withered corpses even opened their tattered mouths and bit Nangongja. It was just a bite, but Nangongja felt a heart-wrenching pain. If he had to describe it, it was as if a piece of his soul had been bitten off. So that's how it is. It's not that I haven't fallen into a deep sleep, but that I've already fallen into a deep sleep. Did the blood energy of the Azura Blood Sea diagram invade my body and pull my soul into this space? Nangongja already had some vague guesses. He also understood some of the uses of the Azura Blood Sea chart. You're right. This Azura Blood Sea is real. It's a power that can be sublimated into a type of blood energy and killing intent that can be used on the soul. Enjoy it. The image of the blood-red clothed young man appeared above Nangongja's head. It was pitch black, and there were faint surges of lightning in the sky. Nangongja endured the pain of his soul being torn apart. His eyes were bloodshot as he looked at the image of the blood-red clothed young man. Are you helpless? Are you in pain? Looking at Nangongja's appearance, the blood-red clothed young man actually laughed out loud. The helplessness and pain you're feeling right now isn't caused by me. It's because of what you've done. When Nangongja heard the words of the blood-red clothed young man, there was a slight struggle in his eyes. He seemed to want to say something to refute the young man's point of view. However, the immense pain made Nangongzhe unable to open his mouth. Nangongzhe. Think about it carefully. Since you joined the Wood Leaf, how many people have died under your sword? It's undeniable that many of them deserve to die. However, do all of them deserve to die? The blood-red clothed young man's huge figure in the pitch-black sky suddenly became small. He landed on the huge blood-red wave in front of Nangongzhe. The blood-red clothed young man rolled up his sleeves and reached out his hand to pull out a small figure from the blood-red wave. I didn't expect this. You didn't even let go of such a small baby? When the blood-red clothed young man showed the thing in his hand, Nangongzhe finally saw it clearly. It was a baby who was at most 2 months old. There was a long bloodstain on the baby's neck. The baby's death was probably caused by its throat being cut. Huff. Huff, because its throat was cut, the baby could not cry normally. It could only make an ear-piercing noise like a rag being blown by a strong wind. Nangongzhe recognized the baby. It was a child from the mountain village that he had wiped out. It was also the only baby that he remembered that he had killed. When the blood-red clothed young man lifted the baby also saw Nangongzhe. The baby's eyes, which were closed, were now wide open. Its eyes looked extremely terrifying. The white of its eyes had turned black. Even its irises were pitch black. Streaks of blood-red streaks were distributed in the baby's eyes like a spider web. Huff. Huff, the baby struggled as if it wanted to crawl to Nangongzhe's side. Its mouth was wide open, revealing sharp canine teeth that did not belong to a human at all. It seems like you've recognized the person who killed you. The blood-red clothed young man seemed to have finally noticed the baby's desperation. He reached out his hand to touch the baby's head that was only covered with a thin layer of black hair. He then threw the baby to Nangongzhe's side. Go. Let him have a good taste of your own anger. The baby was thrown quite a distance away from Nangongzhe. Therefore, the baby could only use its tender hands and feet to crawl over the pile of dried and decayed corpses. The baby was stained with the blood of countless dried corpses. It left a long trail of blood wherever it went. Finally, the baby crawled to Nangongzhe's head that was not covered by the dried corpses. The baby used its small hand to grab Nangongzhe's hair that was originally floating in the air, but was now covered in blood. At this moment, the baby's small hand exploded with great strength. It grabbed a few strands of Nangongzhe's hair and even his scalp that was still stained with blood. Huff. Huff, the baby seemed to have discovered something interesting as it made a huff sound from its mouth. Then, it opened its mouth with sharp canine teeth and bit Nangongzhe's head. Blood flowed out of the baby's mouth and turned into streaks of blood that streaked across Nangongzhe's face. Nangongzhe's face that was already distorted from the pain became even more ferocious. Deep down in your heart, you've always thought that you're not a person who only knows how to kill. However, you've long become a killing machine. The blood-red clothed young man's body flashed and he squatted in front of Nangongzhe. His pair of dark eyes stared at Nangongzhe as if he could see through Nangongzhe's heart. Now, look at the mountains of corpses and seas of blood that you've killed. Can you still shamelessly say that you're still a person? The blood-red clothed young man's lips curled into a charming yet cruel smile. Chapter 86. In a secluded cave, Li Yang, who was wearing a black cloak, stared at Nangongzhe, who was sitting in front of him, as well as the black sword that was stabbed into a huge rock that was engraved with complicated formations. Li Yang's eyes were slightly bloodshot and he could not hide his tiredness. This proved that Li Yang had been staring at Nangongzhe for quite some time. I didn't expect that the genius of the younger generation to be like me. Although his physical body was destroyed, he did not truly die. Instead, he was attached to this black sword. Li Yang looked at Nangongzhe. He was both happy and worried. Nangongzhe is quite brave. I can't believe he accepted such a dangerous trial. However, if he can pass it, his state of mind will improve greatly. If anything goes wrong, both Nangongzhe and I will die. Li Yang shook his head. He did not know how to help Nangongzhe. In the current situation, Nangongzhe was the only one who could save himself. However, Li Yang could feel that Nangongzhe's soul had become extremely unstable recently. It was on the verge of collapsing. It seemed like he was only a hair away from dying completely. Li Yang could not be at ease letting Nangongzhe stay here alone. Hence, he could only stare at Nangongzhe for a bit of peace of mind. Not bad, little thief. It's been 7 days and you haven't fainted even once. You're quite tough. The man in the blood-red shirt looked at Nangongzhe below him. Although he was praising him, his tone was extremely unfriendly. So what? As long as you're still trapped in the Azura Blood Sea diagram, you can't escape. The man's sword-like eyes emitted a mesmerizing glow. He stared at Nangongzhe's eyes that were filled with resentment and fatigue. The man in the blood-red shirt raised his right foot and stepped on Li Yang's head. With a push, he stepped on Nangongzhe's head, which was not drowned by the sea of corpses, into the sea of corpses. Roar! 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 The surrounding withered corpses seemed to be extremely excited to have completely devoured Nangongzhe. They let out a battle-like roar. The crimson-robed man turned around and his figure blurred before he disappeared. However, there was still a faintly discernible sentence left behind. I hope this junior can transcend as soon as possible. These were the most difficult 7 days of Nangongzhe's life. During these 7 days, Nangongzhe felt the pain of his soul being torn apart. Every day, every moment. Every time, there would be a familiar but unfamiliar corpse attached to Nangongzhe's body. It would use its sharp claws to tear his body apart and use its sharp teeth to gnaw at his flesh. But after the flesh was eaten, it would regrow in an instant. Every moment, fresh and intense pain assaulted Nangongzhe. Nangongzhe had already thought about giving up. It was fine to completely sink into the Azura Blood Sea diagram. At least he wouldn't have to experience such pain. But every time he was on the verge of sinking, Nangongzhe would subconsciously wake up. It was as if his body had accumulated some strange power that would always wake him up when he was about to lose consciousness. Nangongzhe endured like this for 7 days. Who are you? Why won't you let me sink completely? I'm in so much pain. It's really painful. I don't want to be like this anymore. I killed all these people. Those babies, those men, those women. Although I don't recognize all of their faces, there are still some familiar figures among them. They came to take my life. I admit it. I'm willing to return it to them. Why do you still want me to stay awake? Nangongzhe roared. Nangongzhe roared. At this moment, Nangongzhe was like a severely injured beast. He could only vent his emotions in this way. Oni-san, so you were called Yama? Only I, Yama, can decide life and death. It's very impressive. Suddenly, such a sentence appeared in Nangongzhe's mind. The person who spoke had a clear voice, like the sound of banging ornaments. It was fresh and pleasant. Most importantly, Nangongzhe felt that it was very familiar. Nangongzhe only knew one person with such a voice. It was his sister, Nangongro. Thinking back to the time when the Third Ninja World War finally ended. He also returned to Woodleaf Village for a short rest. That day, Nangongzhe was sitting at home in a daze. Nangongzhe opened the door and walked in. He said to Nangongzhe excitedly, Oni-san, Oni-san. Many people on the battlefield got a very powerful nickname. The ninja we know called Minato Watergate was called Golden Flash. It sounds very powerful. Do you have a powerful nickname, Oni-san? Looking at Nangongro's hopeful face, Nangongzhe smiled. It's just that I've killed so many people that people are afraid of me. Many people seem to have started calling me Yama. Yama? Hearing Nangongja say this, Nangong-ro murmured again. Oni-san, so you were called Yama? Only I, Yama, can decide life and death. It's very impressive. With that, Nangong-ro's face showed a bright smile. The Third Ninja World War for Nangongja was the battle that killed the most people. But for Nangong-ro's family, it was the most dazzling glory. Decide life and death? Only I, Yama. Although Nangongja was particularly powerless at the moment, these two short sentences were extremely energetic. Every single word was firm and shocking. The corpses that were tightly stacked around him seemed to be frightened at this moment. They all took a small step back. Only I, Yama, can decide life and death. Nangongja repeated it again. This time, his words were even more forceful. It seemed that he had recovered to his peak state, no longer tired after 7 days of torture. Behind Nangongja, there was also a huge cloud of black fog. Slowly, the black fog began to solidify and turned into a man wearing a red official robe, with a green face and fangs. He held a book of life and death in his arms, and a judge's pen in his hand. You have your endless vengeful spirits and asuras, but I have my own Yama-king judgment. No matter who it is, no matter how they die, it will be up to me. Nangongja waved his hand, and Yama behind him seemed to understand the meaning of Nangongja. Yama's body expanded at least 3 or 4 times in an instant, and his original green face and fangs looked even more ferocious at this moment. Life and death, I will decide. A low voice came from Yama's mouth. For a moment, the entire world of the Bloody Sea became quiet. Originally, it was just a sentence, but at this moment, it resounded throughout the Bloody Sea world. Chapter 87. Nangongja's Yama avatar was glaring at him with a ferocious expression. However, his furious eyes revealed an extreme calmness. You killed 162 people in your lifetime, 76 of which were women and children. I hereby sentence you to eternal hell. Looking at one of the souls in the corpse, Yama opened the book of life and death in his arms. After carefully counting the sins of the soul, he drew a line on the book of life and death with the judge's pen in his hand. A medium-sized black hole opened right under the corpse's feet, and waves of wails came out from the black hole. Roar! Roar! The corpse seemed to have lost its ability to speak. It could only roar and struggle. It hoped to escape the black hole's gravitational pull, but it was all in vain. It could only fall. After the withered corpse fell into the black hole, the aura of the King of Hell behind Nangongja seemed to have risen slightly. Yama let out a satisfied grunt. After that, Yama's figure became slightly blurry, and countless human-sized avatars of Yama split off from Yama's main body, standing in front of the deceased souls. I hereby sentence you to reincarnation. I hereby sentence you to eternal hell. I hereby sentence you to 10 years in prison. Voices of judgment rang out in the Azura Blood Sea diagram. Every soul was judged based on what they had done in life. The mountain of corpses and the sea of blood shrunk at a speed visible to the naked eye under Yama's judgment. Finally, when all the souls were sentenced by Yama behind Nangongja, the thick blood and murderous aura became extremely weak. As expected. Lord Liang said you would be able to form your own force through the Azura Blood Sea diagram. Lord Liang's judgment is more accurate. The crimson-robed man who had pushed Nangongja into the sea of blood with a cold expression was now clapping his hands with a smile on his face as he looked at Nangongja, who was standing on the spot and digesting the power of his Yama avatar. If I'm not mistaken, you're the one who broke into the Shikol forest and stole their legacy item, right? Nangongja looked at the blood-robed man and said quietly. His eyes were filled with 30% respect and 70% vigilance. It was enough to show that Nangongja was afraid of the man in the blood-red shirt. Oh. I didn't expect you to know something about me. Hearing Nangong's words, the man in the blood-red shirt was a little surprised, but his eyes were still calm. Everyone said that it was because I was possessed by the devil that I barged into the Shikatsu forest and stole their sacred item. However, how many people know that this so-called inheritance belonging to the slug originally belonged to us, the inheritors of inner strength? After hearing the man's words, Nangong's mind was in a mess. The inherited holy relic belongs to us? Not bad. The man in the blood-red shirt nodded and proved his words. As everyone knows, inner strength and chakra belong to different cultivation systems. Chakra can't be used with inner strength. So why is this sacred item passed down from the Shikol forest so perfectly used by us, the cultivators of inner strength? Naturally, it's because it originally belonged to us. Back then, when I heard the news, I barged into the Shikol forest and stole it. I forged this Heaven's Calamity sword and left a trace of hope for my inner strength. The man in the blood-red shirt's explanation was very clear. However, Nangongja did not want to believe him completely. Anyone who was possessed by the devil had a strange way of thinking. This person could forcefully resist the chaotic thoughts of the devil, but it did not mean that he was not affected at all. Hee, kid, you're really cautious. Fine, fine. I can understand if you don't believe me completely. The man in the blood-red shirt said with a smile. However, the smile on his face slowly disappeared. Although you passed the first trial, I still don't fully agree that you can be the owner of the Heaven's Calamity sword. After hearing what the man in the blood-red shirt said, Nangongja's heart skipped a beat. All of a sudden, he leaped. The man in the blood-red shirt appeared where Nangongja was originally standing. The Heaven's Calamity sword was stabbed into the ground. If Nangongja did not dodge just now, he would have been injured. Here. The man in the blood-red shirt waved his hand and threw a wooden sword in Nangongja's direction. Since you're a swordsman, how can you not use a sword? The wooden sword flew towards Nangongja with a strong gust of wind. Nangongja reached out his right hand and grabbed the wooden sword's hilt. However, the huge force forced Nangongja to turn his body to remove the force from the wooden sword. When Nangongja grasped the wooden sword in his hand firmly, his essence, chi, and spirit became completely different from before. It was as if he had entrusted everything to the sword. The art of sacrificing mind? Not bad. The man in the blood-red shirt saw Nangongja's state and smiled slightly. However, he immediately pounced on Nangongja. One move after another, although there were no subtle changes. Every time he attacked the enemy's most vulnerable areas and hurt the enemy's defenseless areas. In just one move, Nangongja's body was covered in blood. Is that it? It's still a bit lacking. Nangongja looked at the man in the blood-red shirt's mocking eyes. An inexplicable anger appeared in his heart without any warning. Ha! Nangongja shouted and his hands moved. He displayed the fatal 13 swords that Nangong Ro had taught him one by one. One move after another, the killing intent continued to accumulate. The fatal 13 swords? The man in the blood-red shirt recognized Nangongja's sword moves at a glance. There was a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. Do you know that I created this set of sword moves? The man in the blood-red shirt also changed his sword moves. He had been defending against Nangongja's continuous sword moves. Now, he had turned all of his defenses into attacks. They were fighting attacks with attacks. The two men's sword moves were getting more and more open. One could only see faint shadows. Finally, one of them seemed to have been hit and was sent flying. As expected, the one who was sent flying was Nangongja. On Nangongja's right shoulder, blood was flowing out of a bloody hole. Traces of lightning moved up and down on Nangongja's wound, preventing Nangongja's wound from healing. Yes, it was the masterpiece of the Calamity Sword. Your mind is in a mess. Do you think that you can become a real swordsman with a few exquisite sword moves and your physical fitness? You're too naive. The man in the blood-red shirt looked at Nan Gongzhi and said. Chapter 88. Nan Gongzhi clenched the wooden sword in his hand tightly. Due to the numerous clashes with the disaster sword, the wooden sword was already full of scars, and there were deep cracks in several places. However, Nan Gongzhi did not know how to refute the man's words. Whether it was strength, speed, or sword moves. The man in the blood-red robe was almost crushing him. Just now, Nan Gongzhi also felt an inexplicable sense of impatience. Since Nan Gongzhi started fighting people, his opponents were basically ninjas, or ninjas who were proficient in some sword techniques. It was almost unprecedented for Nan Gongzhi to fight with a pure martial artist. This time, Nan Gongzhi had always been on the losing side in the battle between the man in crimson clothes. Although he did not feel anything, the subconscious self-esteem hidden in his heart made Nan Gongzhi's heart uneasy. Huff! Nan Gongzhi exhaled a long breath, and Nan Gongzhi's restless heart and impatience seemed to have slowed down a little. Whether it was the Azura blood sea diagram or the spatial crack before, they were all different. In fact, they had already consumed a lot of Nan Gongzhi's energy. Under such circumstances, it was normal for Nan Gongzhi's mental state to be a little unstable. After Nan Gongzhi exhaled, he stabbed the man in the blood-red robe with his sword. This attack was no longer as hurried as it had been at the beginning. The effect was also much better. When the sword was 3 inches away from the man in the blood-red robe's chest, the man in the blood-red robe used the disaster sword to block Nan Gongzhi's sword. This sword strike is not bad. Let's continue, let's continue. Let me see what kind of master my disaster sword has chosen for me. The man in the blood-red robe was not angry because he almost got hit. Instead, he looked very happy and interested. Since you're back to normal, I'll be a little more serious, right? The crimson-robed man's eyes turned cold. His eyes were filled with sharp sword energy. When Nan Gongzhi met the man's gaze, he felt a stinging pain in his eyes. The Azura blood sea isn't just for suppressing. Learn it well. As the man spoke, the Azura blood sea diagram that had just appeared behind him transformed into a bloody mist. It wrapped around the tribulation sword in his hand. Slash! The man forcefully swung the tribulation sword in his hand, and a crescent-shaped blood-red sword chi attacked Nan Gongzhi. From time to time, shrill cries could be heard coming from the blood-red sword energy. One after another, ghosts were moving about on the blood-red crescent-shaped sword. As long as one came into direct contact with this blood blade, it was very likely that one would be devoured by the malicious spirit hidden within before being harmed by the sword chi. Then I have to thank you for teaching me how to use it. The crimson-robed man's actions had inspired Nan Gongzhi to a certain extent. Nan Gongzhi's thoughts followed Nan Gongzhi's thoughts, and the appearance of Yama that had just formed appeared behind him. Nan Gongzhi nodded at Yama behind him. Yama seemed to understand Nan Gongzhi's intention. Ha! Yama, with a green face and fangs, let out a low roar. He turned into a black thunderbolt and wrapped around the broken wooden sword in Nan Gongzhi's hand. This was originally an ordinary wooden sword. However, at this moment, after Yama's black thunderbolt transformed into Yama, it emitted a shocking aura. Break! Nan Gongzhi turned around and faced the blood-red sword chi that was following him. It was only 2 to 3 meters away from his roommate. He held the wooden sword slightly and charged it for a short period of time. Nan Gongzhi used the wooden sword wrapped in black thunderbolts to slash at the blood-red sword chi. The black and red sword chi collided and entangled with each other. In the end, after a loud explosion, there was no trace of them anymore. The crimson-robed man's figure gradually appeared in the smoke of the explosion. The catastrophe sword in his hand was still wrapped in blood-red clouds, but it was obvious that it had become much fainter. The Azura blood sea painting used the souls of the dead, as well as various kinds of blood chi, killing intent, and evil spirits to unleash its strongest power. However, Nan Gongzhi had formed the true form of Yama. Yama was a kind of power that ruled between heaven and earth. Therefore, when the Azura Blood Sea painting confronted the true form of Yama, it was almost impossible to unleash its greatest advantage. This was also the fundamental reason why Nangongzhe could rely on his newly formed true form of Yama to fight against the crimson-robed man's Azura Blood Sea painting, which had been formed for countless years. "Senior, can't you and I talk nicely? I already have a rough idea of who you are. You don't have any evil intentions towards me. Otherwise, I would have been eaten by all kinds of undead in the Blood Sea." Looking at the crimson-robed man's figure, Nangongzhe was panting at this moment. "Of course I know that you have already guessed my identity. It was probably that old toad from Mount Mayaboku who told you, right? When he used his useless dream entry technique to observe me, I had already noticed. I just didn't want to talk to him. My name is Banishment." Although the crimson-robed man kept talking to Nangongzhe, the sword in his hand never stopped moving. Instead, it was constantly attacking Nangongzhe. "Of course I don't have much time. I have to hurry up and let you truly step onto the path of the sword." When Nangongzhe narrowly dodged one of the Banishment's sword moves, he heard Banishment's words. "Time?" Nangongzhe looked at Banishment. There were some doubts in his heart, as well as some vague guesses. "Yes, I don't have much time. I actually died a long time ago. It's just that a wisp of my soul is residing in this heavenly tribulation sword. In order to let you comprehend the origin, I have already consumed a lot of power. Now I have to hurry up. Otherwise, when my soul dissipates, I won't be able to truly teach you." Banishment constantly waved the heavenly tribulation sword in his hand. Exquisite sword moves were casually used on Nangongzhe. Nangongzhe exerted force on his feet and used the wooden sword to block Banishment's sword moves. Even his body was cut a few times by the sharp sword chi. He used all his strength to block Banishment's sword. He stared at Banishment's eyes with his own eyes. "Then we don't have to do this. Even if you are just a wisp of your soul, you can still continue for a long time as long as you properly nourish yourself. Why are you in such a hurry to teach me in such a way that harms your own origin?" That's right. He could have taught Nangongzhe slowly. However, Banishment still used such an extreme method, which really made Nangongzhe confused. Chapter 89. Ha ha ha. The success and failure of my life were due to the heavenly tribulation. I forged the heavenly tribulation sword and used it to reach the peak of my life. However, when I died, the only thing I could attach my soul to was the heavenly tribulation sword. As Banishment spoke, he subconsciously stopped his sword. He only looked at the sword that had accompanied him for almost his entire life. The heavenly tribulation sword has its own power because of the heavenly tribulation. However, the heavenly tribulation is also the greatest nemesis of all souls that have no one to rely on. When I attached myself to the heavenly tribulation sword, my soul was still very strong and could resist the might of the heavenly tribulation sword. However, time has passed and years have passed. After several hundred years, my soul has long since become weaker and weaker. It has even made the connection between me and the heavenly tribulation sword even tighter. Even if I wanted to leave the heavenly tribulation sword and find something to rely on, it would be impossible. Banishment smiled. To Nangongzhe's surprise, there was no bitterness or helplessness in his smile. Instead, there was a deep sense of contentment and happiness. This was the first time that Nangongzhe had seen Banishment smile other than a sneer. For a moment, the smile on Banishment's handsome face was like the clouds parting to see the sun. It was so blissful and at ease. As a swordsman, isn't this a great way to die? The sword is the only thing that I have attached myself to in my life. It is also the thing that I have trusted the most in my life. At the end of my life, I am not facing the enemy's sword. Instead, I am facing the sword that has accompanied me for my entire life. Isn't this great? Banishment looked at Nangongzhe and smiled at Nangongzhe. Isn't this great? If you want your sword art to become more powerful, if you want your way of the sword to become more magnanimous, what you need to do from the very beginning is to be honest with your heart. I have always attached myself to the heavenly tribulation sword. When you first poured your internal energy into the heavenly tribulation sword, I had already awakened my consciousness. I have seen your battle with the white-haired kid from Woodleaf. I have also experienced the baptism of the aura of the ninja that you called Woodleaf White Fang with you. I have fought the bandits of Lion Mountain with you. I have also faced the smoke of the Ninja World War with you. I have seen you save innocent people. I have seen you kill unarmed civilians. If there is someone who truly understands you, perhaps I am the most qualified, right? When a person ends another person's life, what they reveal is their true self. Some people are happy, some are crazy. Li Jie kept talking, and every word struck Nangongzhe's heart. Nangongzhe had never thought that there would be a person silently watching over him in every battle he fought. It must be known that even Li Yang's aura is sleeping in her body most of the time. In an extremely special situation, or when Nangongzhe takes the initiative to call her, Li Yang doesn't care much about the outside world. Suddenly, knowing that banishment has been paying attention to him, Nangongzhe was a little surprised. There is also a strange feeling lingering in his heart, and he doesn't know how to express it. But when you kill people, you don't have such negative feelings. Banishment ignored the changes in Nangongzhe's heart, and just said, when you end every life, no matter whether the person is good or bad, you will bury a deep feeling of pity in your heart. This is also why the Azura Blood Sea chart has a situation like the 10,000 ghosts gnawing on your body. Because in the depths of your heart, you have a sense of guilt towards each and every one of them. This is very good. Only in this way will you not lose yourself. Back then, I was also a person who was possessed by the devil. I didn't lose my consciousness. The most important thing is this pity. This is the first time Banishment mentioned that he was possessed by the devil. It is also the reason why Nangongzhe knew that Banishment can resist the madness of being possessed by the devil. But do I really have this kind of pity that can resist the madness of the devil? Nangongzhe asked Banishment and himself. The feeling of pity will never become small. It is like a seed that slowly takes root in your body. One day, it will grow into a towering tree. Banishment shook his head and said, your current inner strength hasn't transformed to its strongest state yet. This is because you haven't completely merged the sword energy and inner strength in your body. Only a small amount of sword energy is attached to the inner strength in your body. You still need to become stronger, because the chaotic world is about to begin. After listening to Banishment's words, Nangongzhe was shocked. Especially the word chaotic world. Nangongzhe had an unusual feeling in his heart. Chaotic world? Banishment nodded. Yes, whether it is me, the three holy lands, or even Liyang. We all have a premonition that the world is about to face a challenge. This is a perception that all people who have surpassed a certain level of strength will get. This is also the reason why I was willing to stay in the Heaven's Disaster Sword for countless years. This world needs people to save it, not one person. It is the gathering of all the forces in the world. Only then will it be possible. Nangongzhe heard Banishment's words. Although he believed what Banishment said. But how difficult is it to gather all the forces of the ninja world? Every ninja village has a blood feud with each other. A large number of people who wander around in another ninja village will encounter a large number of their enemies and want to draw their swords against them. Cooperation? It is simply an impossible task. I once met a contractor of Mount Mayaboku. When he chatted with me, I learned that Mount Mayaboku has been looking for a person who can unify the forces of the ninja world. They want this person to become the Son of Hope. Although the old toad is usually quite unreliable, his prophecies have never been wrong. So, such a person must exist. But I also made my own plans and established a secret organization. If you can pass my test and become a real swordsman, you can bring the Heaven's Disaster Sword with you. You can bring the Heavenly Tribulation Sword there, and one day in the future, you can contribute to this world the strength of us inner force cultivators. As Lixia spoke, she raised the Heavenly Tribulation Sword that had been hanging by her side. Let's finish the gossip, let's continue the training. Although it was a question, Banishment completely ignored Nan Gongzhi and wanted to continue to ask questions. Instead, he continued to attack Nan Gongzhi again and again. Yes. Let's wait for the next day. The most important thing now is to let you, the former owner of the Heaven's Disaster Sword, truly recognize me, right? Nan Gongzhi also raised his wooden sword and rushed forward. Chapter 90. Flap. Nan Gongzhi, who had been sitting for a long time, suddenly trembled. Dust began to fall from his body. The surrounding air suddenly became a lot more polluted. Crack. Crack. Nan Gongzhi tried to move his body, and every joint of his body let out popping sounds. I don't know how long I've been in the Banishment Seniors training. My body is so stiff. Nan Gongzhi smacked his lips. Obviously, he was very dissatisfied with his body. In the spiritual space, Nan Gongzhi had been fighting with the Banishment Senior's sword. Nan Gongzhi was so nervous that he did not realize the passage of time. Of course, this could also be because there was nothing in the spiritual space that could be used as a reference for the passage of time. Although I've already prepared myself for the fact that the Banishment Senior's soul will dissipate after this training, I still can't believe it. At this moment, I still can't suppress the emotions in my heart. Nan Gongzhi raised the black sword in front of him. There was not a single speck of dust on it. It was the Heaven's Disaster Sword. At this moment, the Heaven's Disaster Sword seemed to have sensed that its master was holding it again. Some of the cracks on the sword's body flowed with a blue light. Nan Gongzhi stood up. Holding the Heaven's Disaster Sword, he gently waved it. A burst of sword chi burst out from his body and scattered all the dust on his clothes. Nan Gongzhi touched his hair that had almost reached his waist. He smiled awkwardly. This time, my hair has reached my waist, right? He was too lazy to care about his long hair. He took out the bandage that was supposed to be used to bandage his wounds and casually tied up his hair to prevent it from getting in the way. He looked at his surroundings. At this moment, Nan Gongzhi was in an underground cave. Although the surroundings were dark, there were still patches of glowing moss that emitted a faint light. In front of Nan Gongzhi was a huge rock that was engraved with many spells. Nan Gongzhi relied on the spell formation on this rock to summon the Banishment Senior's soul with the Heaven's Disaster Sword. There was only one exit around him. Nan Gongzhi did not pay much attention to it. He picked up the long sword and walked towards the exit. This part of the cave was not short. Nan Gongzhi walked for almost 5 minutes before he reached the exit of the cave. The scorching sunlight was slightly dazzling, illuminating Nan Gongzhi's skin, which had turned pale from staying underground for too long, with a crystalline luster. Nan Gongzhi raised his hand and slightly blocked the scorching sunlight. At the same time, he discovered a small lion cub to the side of the cave exit that he had just exited. This small cub was only the length of his forearm. Was very cute. Hey, little lion. Wake up. Nan Gongzhi squatted beside the small cub. He used his hand to poke the small cub's chubby cheeks. Originally, the small cub seemed to be sleeping very soundly. There was even a large snot bubble floating above its cute little nose. When Nan Gongzhi poked the small cub's face, the small cub slowly woke up. It used its small paws to rub its sleepy eyes. The small cub muttered, "Sister Mashiro, did you come to see the dirty big brother who has been in the cave for a long time?" Dirty? Nan Gongzhi was stunned. Although he was not a germaphobe, did being dirty have anything to do with it? It seemed that Nan Gongja had selectively forgotten that he had shaken off the dust on the ground when he woke up. Look carefully. Nan Gongja looked at the small cub and said with a smile. Oh my God, who are you? Why are you smiling so wretchedly? Do you know where this is? Don't you know who I am? The small cub immediately put on an aggressive posture and looked at Nan Gongja arrogantly. He seemed to think that his posture was very mighty and domineering. He roared at Nan Gongja as if he was showing off his prowess. I really don't know where this is, and I really don't know who you are. Looking at the small cub, Nan Gongja seemed to have a bad taste. He also put on an overbearing attitude and looked at the little lion in front of him that was only the length of his forearm with his nostrils. Roar! This is the secret place of the lion clan. There are countless strong people here. I am one of the best among them, Master Li Yang. Before the small cub finished speaking, Nan Gongja heard Li Yang's name and couldn't help but interrupt. Hey, can't you hear me out? Little Lion rolled his eyes and looked at Nan Gongja, who was standing in front of him and could only look up at him. I am the godson of Master Li Yang. Lionheart King, Arthur. Tremble under the glory of this great master. After Arthur finished his words, he instantly felt that his momentum had reached its peak. Didn't he see that the ugly human standing in front of him with his nostrils was now scared to death? Even his face had turned red from fright, and his shoulders and other parts of his body were trembling from fright. Sigh, this great uncle is really powerful. When will I let my godfather, Ryo-sama, take me to the ninja world and let those stupid humans see the glory of the Lionheart King? The revival of the Lion clan will be realized in my hands. Ha ha ha. Looking at Li Yang, who seemed to be wantonly in front of him, Nan Gongja was really holding back his laughter. He didn't want to leave any psychological shadow on this small cub because of his excessive laughter. He didn't know what color his face would become because he was trying his best to hold back his laughter. Okay, little Arthur. Go inform Li Yang that I've come out of seclusion. Nan Gongja finally suppressed his instinct to laugh and said to Arthur. What, little Arthur? I am the Lionheart King Arthur. You want to see Master Li Yang? Why don't you look at yourself? Arthur didn't finish his words. He looked at Nan Gongja standing in front of him and suddenly felt that this person was somewhat familiar. Just like the person sitting in the cave. Oh. The small cub seemed to have become a little flustered at this moment. After running around for a long time, he finally calmed down a little bit. Looking at Nan Gongja in front of him. You are Master Li Yang's contractor? Although it was a question, the small cub already had a plan in his heart. Okay, go and find Li Yang. Nan Gongja smiled and looked at the very anxious small cub in front of him. He didn't mind the small cub's attitude just now. After all, although the small cub seemed to be overbearing just now. But it was still very cute, wasn't it? Yes. Nan Gongja-sama, I will go and find Master Li Yang. The little lion lowered its head towards Nan Gongja as a form of greeting before running off without a trace. Chapter 91. Not long after, Li Yang arrived at Nan Gongja's side. Li Yang's heavy breathing was enough to prove how much effort she had put in to get here as soon as possible. Seeing Nan Gongja's calm expression, Li Yang went up and gave him a bear hug. The huge force made Nan Gongja a little breathless. He patted Li Yang's shoulder, indicating for her to let him go. Li Yang instantly understood. After letting go of Nan Gongja, her pair of tiger eyes stared at Nan Gongja. Kid, you're finally back. When Li Yang said that, her expression changed a little. I say, how long has it been since we last met? Has your sexual orientation changed? Looking at the obviously abnormal Li Yang in front of him, Nan Gongja deliberately put on a disgusting, don't come near me expression. Looking at Nan Gongja's expression in front of her, Li Yang felt that all her concern had been fed to a dog. She looked like she was about to lose control and go up to Nangongzhi to beat him up. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Nangongzhi's face, and Li Yang also laughed out loud. The two of them reached out their hands at the same time and held each other's hands. Whether it was Nangongzhi's white and slender hand or Li Yang's rough and wide hand, at this moment, they held each other's hands tightly. "Welcome back." Li Yang smiled and said at the same time. These days, Nangongzhi was immersed in the banishment trial, which scared Li Yang out of her wits. The two of them were connected by life and death, so Nangongzhi's abnormal mental state was all the same. Li Yang shared almost real-time information. When Nangongzhi was bitten by 100 ghosts during the banishment trial, and when he was severely injured in the battle with the banishment, Li Yang felt that Nangongzhi's heart was not the same as Nangongzhi's. Li Yang really did not feel the same way. Li Yang was very clear about what Nangongzhi had gone through during this period of time. Every time he felt Nangongzhi's pain, he would ask himself if it was right to let Nangongzhi use the boulder formation to summon the remnant soul of the banishment sword. These days, Li Yang had been blaming herself in her heart. This was also the reason why Li Yang had acted so strangely and lost his composure. Gong gong. Just as Nangongzhi wanted to say something to Li Yang, a familiar voice came from afar. Nangongzhi didn't continue talking to Li Yang. Instead, he quickly ran towards the source of the sound. Finally, the figure in the distance became clear. It was Mashiro. Although Nangongzhi already knew that Mashiro was also in the Lion clan's secret place, when he really saw Mashiro at this moment, Nangongzhi couldn't help but feel waves in his heart. Mashiro. Nangongzhi stood in front of Mashiro, smiled, and called out the name of the girl standing in front of him. Pa. Before Nangongzhi could finish his words, Mashiro slapped Nangongzhi's face. Just like that, a red five-finger mark appeared on his originally handsome face. You still know how to come back. They had already found the location of the Lion clan in Liyang and could return safely. But you just had to follow the words of that strange sword spirit in your broken sword and use that boulder formation to push yourself into such a dangerous situation. Are you stupid? Don't you know that whether it's me, Roar-san, or Little Linger, we are all waiting for you to come home? Nangongzhi listened to Mashiro's series of accusations and knew that what he did this time was really irrational. In fact, when Nangongzhi and Li Yang were in the space crack, they were guided by the remnant spirit of banishment hidden in the heaven's disaster sword and came to this hidden space of the Lion clan. However, banishment clearly told Nangongzhi and Li Yang about the dangers that the shinobi world was about to face. In order to let Nangongzhi focus on the trial, he even sealed all the memories of Nangongzhi before he arrived at the Lion clan's territory. However, it was precisely this trial that lasted as long as 6 months. Even when Li Yang returned to the wood leaf and explained the situation to Mashiro, Roar, and Little Linger, she didn't say that Nangongzhi wouldn't be safe. And to ensure that Nangongzhi wouldn't be in any danger, the 3 women in Konoha couldn't help but start to worry about Nangongzhi. In order to determine the situation of Nangongzhi, the 3 women decided to follow Li Yang to the different space of the Lion clan. But Li Yang finally persuaded Nangongro, who was still working in the wood leaf, and Little Linger, who was too young, stayed in the wood leaf. But it was precisely Mashiro, who usually had the most gentle temperament and seemed to be the most aloof, who was unusually persistent this time. With no other choice, Li Yang could only bring Mashiro here. In order to not let Nangongzhi's trial undisturbed, Mashiro could only look at Nangongzhi from a distance every time. Looking at Nangongzhi's hair growing a little bit, his clothes were tattered, and layers of dust were superimposed on Nangongzhi's body. In this way, Mashiro felt that he had passed the most difficult 3 months of his life. Looking at the palm print on Nangongzhi's face, Mashiro's eyes were slowly filled with tears, and he hugged Nangongzhi in front of him. You bastard! Doing this kind of dangerous thing again and again, can't you be more obedient? Mashiro threw himself into Nangongzhi's arms, crying and saying. I'm sorry, originally, Nangongja wanted to explain to Mashiro why he made such a choice, but looking at Mashiro's sad appearance, Nangongja couldn't say anything. He could only press one hand on Mashiro's head and gently stroke it, while the other hand hugged Mashiro's shoulder that was trembling from crying. Nangongja hugged Mashiro like this, and Mashiro was crying in Nangongja's arms. Finally, Mashiro's crying gradually stopped. Using both hands, she struggled out of Nangongja's arms. She rubbed her eyes that were red from crying. I have to hurry back to Woodleaf. Sister Rower and Little Linger are still waiting for me to tell them that you've woken up. Mashiro felt uncomfortable under Nangongja's gaze. She avoided Nangongja's eyes and didn't dare to look him in the eye. As she said that, she looked like she wanted to hurry back to Woodleaf with Li Yang. But just as Mashiro turned around, Nangongja grabbed Mashiro's wrist. Okay, you don't have to be so anxious. I'll go look for Ryo in a while and ask him to arrange for Arthur to go to Konoha. I'll tell Ro, and Ray about it. As for you. Nangongja looked at Mashiro, who was standing in front of him. Not only were her eyes red from crying, but she also looked haggard. You should rest well for a few days. Space travel has a high requirement for a person's physique. You haven't cultivated before, but you managed to withstand such power. You've been watching me these days, so you definitely didn't rest well. You should rest well and leave the rest to me. Chapter 92. Ignoring what Mashiro wanted to say, Nangongja carried Mashiro in his arms. Looking at Nangongja, who was so close to her, feeling the hot air from Nangongja's nose and the warmth from Nangongja's body, Mashiro felt that all her words were suppressed. She just wanted to stay in Nangongja's arms. A pair of beautiful eyes stared at Nangongja's cheeks. Her fair cheeks were naturally covered with a layer of red makeup. What are you looking at? I just want to send you to sleep. Nangongja also noticed that Mashiro had been staring at him. He thought that Mashiro didn't want to go back to sleep. Therefore, he said this without understanding the situation. Looking at Nangongja's expression, Mashiro could only roll her eyes back at Nangongja. Nangongja stood in place and looked around for a long time. There was only grass all around him, and he didn't know where to go. He could only make some strange noises, hoping to remind Zhenbai where to go. However, Mashiro, who was usually smart, seemed to be in a daze at this moment. She didn't notice the awkwardness in Nangongja's heart at all. Nangongja had no choice but to open his mouth and ask, "Where should I go to send you back to your place? After I came here with Li Yang last time, I didn't stay for long and ran to the cave." Mashiro finally realized that Nangongja didn't know where to send her. She covered her mouth with her small hand and giggled. Idiot Miyagi. Laughing, Mashiro didn't forget to scold Nangongja. However, at the same time, she pointed out the direction to Nangongja with her other hand. You're blaming me? I've never walked around this place before, how would I know where to go? After knowing the direction, Nangongja picked up his speed and ran towards Mashiro's place. While running, she was still mumbling, as if she was a little emotional. However, Mashiro was in Nangongja's arms at this moment. Even if she was mumbling, Mashiro could still hear it. However, this only made Mashiro laugh even louder and more excitedly. Looking at Mashiro in his arms, Nangongja couldn't connect this girl who was laughing with the girl who was crying in his arms just now. Sure enough, it was hard to guess the thoughts of girls. Following Mashiro's direction, Nangongja quickly found a small wooden house located on a small hill. At the bottom of the hill, there was a slightly wide but shallow stream. A large tree grew beside the small house. No one knew how long this tree had lived. Its huge canopy almost covered the entire small house. In front of the small house, there was a small flower bed. There were many small flowers that Nangongja knew, some of which looked familiar. The lion clan isn't a social animal, and they live in the open. This small house was built with Li Yang's help. That huge tree seems to be the pillar that supports the stability of this world. Mashiro seemed to have noticed Nan Gongjia's doubts, so she explained. This place is really not bad, although it's not as exquisite as our home in Woodleaf. However, it's closer to nature here, and it's very comfortable. In the future, we can often come here to live, whether it's physical or mental, it's very good. Nan Gongjia himself can draw on the power of nature, coupled with the banishment of Nan Gongjia's training. Nan Gongjia's spiritual power and perception of natural energy have improved a lot. When Nan Gongjia came out of the cave, he already felt the density of natural energy around him. It's much higher than any place he has been in the ninja world. When he came near the small hill and the big tree, Nan Gongjia felt that the natural energy around him is no longer in the form of concepts, but it's about to condense into a physical substance. With such rich natural energy, even people who haven't practiced martial arts will naturally relax, and under the subtle influence of natural energy, their physical fitness will slowly improve. If it's someone who has practiced martial arts, then they can actively absorb the natural energy around them to enrich their body and spirit. It can be said that there are a lot of benefits. Hearing Nan Gongjia say that this place is very good, Mashiro felt very happy for a while and nodded. After all, this place was slowly tidied up by himself, and being able to make Nan Gongjia like it, Mashiro also felt a different kind of satisfaction in his heart. Looking at Nan Gongjia still holding himself tightly in his arms, Mashiro only felt that he has lived with Nan Gongjia for a long time, like a pair of lovers who have been in love for many years, looking for a place to settle down. Creak, because the whole room was made of wood. When Nan Gongjia opened the door of the hut, it was difficult to avoid the sound of the door post rubbing against each other. Looking at the extraordinarily clean room, Nan Gongjia couldn't help but smile. I still remember the first time I saw you, you were very dull and a little sloppy. There were even some undergarments mixed in with the clothes all over the floor. Look at you now, you actually like to tidy up so much. Nan Gongjia actually remembered the first time he met Mashiro. Annoying. No matter what, it has been so long, how can I not have improved at all? Mashiro slightly pouted as she used her small fist to punch Nan Gongjia's shoulder. He pulled open Mashiro's blanket on the bed, and gently put Mashiro in his arms on the bed, and looked at the girl who has been with him for almost 2 years. Nan Gongjia was also filled with emotions. Thinking about it, we have known each other for almost 2 years, right? Nan Gongjia's words also pulled Mashiro into the memories. Yes, just in these 2 years alone. You have already fainted twice in a row, and countless injuries. Mashiro said, with a hint of bitterness in her tone. You and Roer have been worried enough because of me. In the end, it is because I am not strong enough. If I was strong enough to kill gods, then how would I be able to do it? Why would I make you worry about me like this every day? Nan Gongjia said, but Mashiro had already begun to shake her head. She pressed her hand on Nan Gongjia's cheek. Gong Gong, to me. You are still the most powerful hero this world has given me. You have protected me time and time again. You are very strong, not only because of your swordsmanship, but also because of your inner strength. It is also because of your gentleness and compassion. Chapter 93. Hearing Mashiro's words, Nan Gongjia couldn't help but blush. After all, with Nan Gongjia's personality, he would be a little embarrassed if someone suddenly called him a hero. He reached out his hand and touched Mashiro's forehead as she lay on the bed. Nan Gongjia smiled, okay, don't try to enlighten me. I can still accept these things. The most important thing for you now is to have a good sleep, right? Looking at Nan Gongjia's smiling face, feeling the warmth from Nan Gongjia's palm. Mashiro buried his head deep in the blanket. Okay. Although Mashiro's voice was very soft, Nan Gongjia still heard it clearly. Nan Gongjia smiled and nodded slightly. Then, he was ready to take his hand away and discuss some things with Li Yang. Just as Nangongzhi stood up, he suddenly felt his sleeve being pulled. The person pulling Nangongzhi's sleeve was Mashiro lying on the bed. "No. Don't go. Or, can you wait until I fall asleep?" Half of Mashiro's face was buried in the blanket, only his eyes could be seen. She was looking at Nangongzhi, who was standing beside her bed, shyly and hopefully. If you still have something to do, you don't have to accompany me." Seeing Nangongzhi's hesitation, Mashiro spoke intermittently. But in Mashiro's eyes, there was still some disappointment. "It's okay, I'll accompany you until you fall asleep." In fact, Nangongzhi wasn't in a hurry. Plus, Mashiro was looking at him like this, so how could he refuse? Nangongzhi sat on Mashiro's bed again and held Mashiro's little hand. "Be good, have a good sleep." Hearing Nangongzhi's voice, Mashiro slowly closed her eyes. Slowly, he entered his own dreamland. Which girl didn't yearn for love? How could a young man not be sentimental? Mashiro's dream was the most realistic portrayal of herself. The big tree, the wooden house, the small stream at the foot of the mountain. Everything was exactly the same as Mashiro's current place, but the big tree seemed to have grown a little bigger, and the wooden house was a little more dilapidated. "What should we eat today?" A slightly hunched figure slowly pushed open the door of the wooden house. The figure's white hair proved that he had lived a long life. Although there were more wrinkles on his face, and his skin was a little loose. But one could still vaguely see that it was Nangongzhi. He followed behind Nangongzhi and walked out of the wooden house. He was also an old man, and upon closer inspection, he looked a little like Mashiro. "Just do it as you see fit. I've already brewed your tea and put it under the tree. You can drink some when you want to." The old Mashiro looked at Nangongzhi, who was also old. Although he had been busy with some trivial matters, his turbid eyes were full of deep affection. "You seem to have seen the flowers you planted a few years ago?" The old Nangongzhi squinted his eyes, hoping that he could see the scenery in front of him more clearly. And in the direction that Nangongzhi was looking at, there was a small flower bed. All kinds of unknown flowers were quietly blooming in the middle of it. They were emitting their own brilliance. "You just found out?" The old Mashiro stood behind Nangongzhi and patted Nangongzhi's head with his slightly skinny hand. He seemed to be reprimanding Nangongzhi, but his words were full of tenderness. "Li Yang, since I've broken free from the trial of banishment. I'm sure you know that banishment is now." After Nangongzhi saw that Mashiro had fallen asleep, he left Mashiro's wooden house. He specially called Arthur, who was guarding the entrance of the cave, to Mashiro's room to protect Mashiro's safety. Nangongzhi went straight to Li Yang. Although Nangongzhi did not finish his sentence, Li Yang understood what Nangongzhi meant. Banishment was a rare genius and madman. Just like that, the last mark he left in the human world disappeared without anyone knowing. It really made people sigh endlessly. Although banishment was not born in the same era as me, he was still recorded in the ancient records passed down by the Lion clan. Li Yang was also a little emotional. After all, when she first started, she was similar to banishment. She was a remnant soul in the world. Fortunately, she had met Nangongzhi. Otherwise, she might have ended up like banishment. Her soul might have been destroyed. Nangongzhi and Li Yang were standing at the entrance of the cave that Nangongzhi had been in. The more he looked at the deep cave, the more it looked like a mausoleum's tomb. It was a little dark and a little scary. Occasionally, there would be a chilly feeling drifting out from it. "Let's use this cave as banishment's tomb." Nangongzhi looked at Li Yang and asked. After all, when banishment died, there was nothing left of his body. It was reasonable to use the place where his soul dissipated as his tomb. Li Yang nodded, indicating that she agreed. Thus, Nangongzhi pulled out the tribulation sword on his back. He gradually poured the natural energy in his body into the tribulation sword. Nangong's natural energy was like a magnet, constantly attracting the rich natural energy in the surroundings. Under the constant influx of natural energy, the tribulation sword was wrapped in a thick layer of energy. The sword seemed to expand and was covered in a thick layer of green. Feeling that the sword in his hand had accumulated a lot of energy, Nangongzhe slashed the tribulation sword from bottom to top. Rise! Following Nangongzhe's command, the natural energy constantly pulled the earth. A large piece of soil was pulled out. The natural energy constantly spread out from Nangongzhe's tribulation sword in the form of waves. It was like huge waves hitting a large piece of soil in front of Nangongzhe. The soil, which was originally loose, slowly became hard under the baptism of the natural energy. When the hitting stopped, the diamond-shaped soil, which was originally 6 meters in size, had been hit until it was only 20 centimeters thick. However, its hardness had already surpassed that of ordinary steel. Seal! Nangongzhe pointed the tribulation sword at the entrance of the cave. The soil wall obeyed Nangongzhe's guidance and buckled into the cave entrance with a loud sound. Looking at the soil wall that had already merged with the mountain, Nangongzhe heaved a sigh of relief. These days, the effect of Li's teaching was really amazing. Chapter 94. Nangongzhe let out a long sigh of relief as he looked at the dirt wall in front of him that had already merged with the mountain wall. After all, he had gathered the dust hidden in the air and condensed it into such a large piece of dirt. At the same time, he had also used the power of nature to temper it. This was indeed a very taxing task. However, this was also the first time Nangongzhe had used the power of nature after a long period of seclusion. Regardless of whether it was the process or the final result, it made Nangongzhe feel that he had benefited greatly from the various trials that Li had undergone during this period of time. Nangongzhe touched the small, palm-sized green jade gourd behind his waist. He began to miss the banishment that had tormented him so much during the trials. You once said that you only loved 2 things in your life. One was swords, and the other was wine. That's why you gave this green jade gourd to me. However, I'm a person who doesn't drink wine. Wouldn't letting this thing follow me be like a pearl covered in dust? Although Nangongzhe spoke as if he wasn't very interested in the green jade gourd, the deep reminiscence in his eyes clearly revealed his inner thoughts. Since that's the case, then write down your tombstone for me. Nangongzhe shook the tribulation sword in his hand, scattering the power of nature that had coiled around the sword. He gently sheathed the tribulation sword in the scabbard on his back and stretched out his right hand, using it as a sword finger. The sword chi hidden in his body instantly spread over Nangongzhe's fingers. His fingers, which were originally incomparably weak compared to a sword, were now bearing the extremely destructive sword chi. An inch-long sword light even shot out from his fingertips. Nangongzhe leaped up high with a light leap. He continuously waved his right arm, carving out marks on the hard dirt wall that Nangongzhe had just created. This kid has actually improved so much? Li Yang was slightly surprised to see Nangongzhe using his abilities so skillfully in front of her. After all, Nangongzhe and banishment had been training in the spiritual space for a long time, but that was still in the spiritual space. Whether it was the physical quality or the accumulation of inner strength, it was impossible to accomplish. But now, Nangongzhe was able to use natural energy so easily, and he could even skillfully control the sword energy in his body that had caused him so much trouble. This allowed Li Yang to once again see what kind of genius this junior called banishment was. Just as Li Yang's mind wandered and she began to think about the banishment, Nangongzhe also finished carving on the wall. Nangongzhe flicked off the remaining ashes on his fingers and patted Li Yang's shoulder. Do you think this epitaph is worthy of banishment? Li Yang's train of thought was interrupted by Nangongzhe. She finally had the mood to look at the result of Nangongzhe's carving on the wall. It would have been better if she didn't look. After looking, Li Yang's mouth began to softly repeat the words written on the wall. When the wine enters the grand intestine, 30% becomes moonlight, 70% becomes sword energy. When the sword is in hand, there are thousands of things in the world. When the sword wielder is in banishment, his soul ends here. Although it was only a few words, it vividly expressed the spirit of banishment. Although I haven't really met this junior called banishment, I think this person's style should be like this. If I was lucky back then, I would definitely drink with such an interesting guy. Li Yang also had a regretful expression at this moment. There were indeed many experts in this world, but there were far too few people who truly had their own beliefs and wouldn't be swayed by the words of others. Banishment was also an internal energy cultivator who had been possessed by the devil. Although he had been possessed by the devil, he didn't lose his heart in the end. If such a person wasn't suitable to drink with, then who else was suitable? Catch! Nangongzhi tossed the green jade gourd behind him to Li Yang. This is banishment's wine gourd. Back then, he found an extremely powerful boundary master to engrave a spatial restriction on the wine gourd, causing the space inside to become extremely large. In the last few years before banishment left the world, he brewed an entire gourd of wine himself, hoping that after he disappeared from the world, there would still be people who would drink this wine and remember him. In the end, he told me that this wine gourd was placed under that huge rock. Before I left, I took it with me. Since you want to drink with him, then that's fine too. But don't finish it. I also have a share of this wine. Although Nangongzhi's last sentence sounded a little stingy, Li Yang actually knew very well in his heart. This kid didn't know how to drink at all. When he said that he wanted him to keep the wine, it was nothing more than a way to remember banishment. Ha ha ha. Of course. Since there's such a good wine before me, how can I not drink to my heart's content? Li Yang placed the small green jade gourd against his big mouth and slowly poured out the wine inside. The bright red wine glowed like a blood-red amber under the sunlight. It reminded Nangongzhi of the time when banishment drank to his heart's content in front of him. He actually stretched out his hand and said to Li Yang, "Give it to me. I want to have a few mouthfuls too." Li Yang stopped drinking and looked at Nangongzhi with a grin. He threw the green jade gourd in his hand to Nangongzhi. Nangongzhi didn't hesitate and poured the green jade gourd in his hand into his mouth. The wine also entered Nangongzhi's mouth. It didn't have the pungent and choking feeling of other wines that Nangongzhi had seen before. Instead, it was extremely smooth. Traces of coolness emanated from the wine and quickly spread throughout his mouth. Nangongzhi drank the wine one mouthful after another. The corners of his eyes involuntarily became a little teary. Banishment wasn't a person who was particularly good at communicating with others. However, Nangongzhi was completely conquered by banishment's charm in this short period of time. Therefore, the various emotions hidden in the depths of his heart, under the stimulation of the wine, they were slowly revealed. He sealed the wine gourd in his hand and hung it behind his waist again. Nangongzhi stood in front of the tombstone that he wrote for banishment. I don't know what kind of person I will become after this. Will I be loyal to Woodleaf or will I wander the world? Will I be a good person or a bad person? Now, I don't understand at all. Especially after staying in Woodleaf for so many years, I became more and more confused about this world. But it was you who made me feel that this world isn't just filled with deceit and benefits. There were more pure feelings, and they would never be worn away. If this world can still be saved, I'm willing to do everything I can. In an instant, the figures of everyone he knew appeared in front of Nangongzhi. After all, there are more and more things in this world that I cherish. Chapter 95. Just like that, the legendary banishment that had been passed down in people's mouths and recorded in ancient books. Just like that, the last trace of his mark in the human world was erased. A young swordsman carrying the longsword that was treasured by the banishment once again walked the world. Perhaps everyone was like this? Whether it was the legendary banishment, or Senja Takuma, who was known as the god of shinobi, or even the sage of the six paths. In the end, his entire life had become a fragment of some people's memories. Or perhaps, they had buried their experiences deeply in a pile of old books. When Mashiro woke up, Nangongja was no longer by his side. He must have gone to find Li Yang. Although I've always understood you, and I know you have more important things to do. But, if you can be like in my dream, and accompany me to grow old, how good would that be? Mashiro muttered to himself, but he also remembered what he had just done. That short, ordinary dream that he yearned for. But in the end, Mashiro could only shake his head. These are things I shouldn't have thought about. As for why he shouldn't have, Mashiro was very clear. He never truly belonged to himself, so how could these beautiful things happen to him? Knock. Knock. The door of the hut was knocked a few times. Before Mashiro could speak, Nangongja's voice came from outside the door. Mashiro. Are you awake? I saw that you lit up the light in the room. If you're well rested, let's prepare and go back to the wood leaf. Hearing Nangongja's words, Mashiro hurriedly patted his face with his hands to wake himself up. He immediately said, I'm awake. I'm already awake. Let's go. You don't have to pack anything, Rower has been waiting for you for a long time. It's better if we go back quickly. As she spoke, Mashiro also walked to the door of her room. She opened the door and saw Nangongja standing at the door. Are you okay? Nangongja suddenly asked. Your eyes look red. Haven't you rested enough? If you still want to sleep for a while, that's fine too. We don't lack the time. After hearing Nangongja's question, Mashiro was a little confused. Did his eyes turn red? She quickly walked into the room and looked at her face in the mirror. It was indeed a little red and swollen. Looking at the pillow on the bed in the room, it was also wet. Could it be that when he was dreaming, he actually cried out? Mashiro asked himself, but he couldn't come up with an answer for a long time. He could only turn his head and look at Nangongja. I'm fine. Maybe something went into my eye just now. But you were in the room. How could there be? Before Nangongja could finish his sentence, he was pushed out of the room by Mashiro. Don't just stand there like a fool. I still have to pack. We can set off very soon. Just like that, Nangongja was pushed out of the room by Mashiro. After being stunned for a long time, Nangongja said in a daze. Didn't you just say that there's nothing to pack? Sigh. Women. After a short while, Mashiro also came out of the room with a small bag in her hand. She looked at Nangongja, who was still standing where she pushed Nangongja. She tiptoed and knocked on Nangongja's head. Let's go. Fool, how much longer do you want to wait for Roert Mimi? Touching the place where he was hit, Nangongja was still puzzled as to why this lass had hit him so hard. He could only go along with Mashiro's words. Okay, let's go. Nangongja rolled up his left sleeve, revealing the lion head seal inside. Rio, let's go. He muttered in his heart, and a ball of light rose from his east. It rushed towards Nangongja's place. The lion cub, Arthur, who was guarding the entrance of Nangongja's cave, was also wrapped in the brilliance. Most of the lions here have already seen through the world. They don't want to wade in the muddy waters of the ninja world. It's just that I'm really worried about this little guy. I might as well take him with me. Listening to Rio's words, Nangongja couldn't help but remember the habits of some of the ordinary lions he saw in the ninja world. He secretly complained in his heart, lions are really a lazy species. But then, Rio's voice sounded in Nangongja's mind. You. I'm connected to you mentally, how dare you say this kind of thing when I'm awake? It seems that you still need some lessons. Roar. A huge lion's roar sounded in Nangong's mind. Although it didn't have any great lethality, Nangong still felt a little uncomfortable for a while. After all, he was the one who complained about the lions behind their backs, and he also killed Arthur and Rio. Nangong could only beg Rio for mercy in his mind for a while. After a long time, he finally calmed Rio down. Nangong handed Arthur, who was brought by Rio, to Mashiro, who was standing next to him. He also pulled out the tribulation sword on his back. It was different from the first time when he left the Woodleaf village to find the different space where the lions were. He still needed to draw a huge formation. This time, Nangong returned to the Woodleaf village because he had a clear space coordinate. Nangong drew the tribulation sword in the void, and countless natural energy gathered in the place where Nangong's sword was drawn. After a while, a huge wormhole appeared in front of Nangong. Let's go. Nangong stretched out his hand in front of Mashiro. It seemed that he wanted to take Mashiro's hand and walk into the wormhole together. Although this wasn't the first time Mashiro traveled through a wormhole, the deep wormhole still made Mashiro slightly afraid. But when Nangong stretched out his hand in front of Mashiro, and Mashiro also held Nangong's hand, all the uneasiness and fear in her heart were dispelled at this moment. Come to think of it, this is the reason why I'm more and more attached to Nangong, right? Although this man isn't an invincible existence who can fight alone in the ninja world, and even Nangong was seriously injured in front of me several times. But every time, it was this man who always protected me. Even if I suffered a lot of injuries, he would still do his best to protect Mashiro. Mashiro held Nangong's hand even more tightly. He stepped into the wormhole together with Nangong. Chapter 96. In the wormhole, after a short period of darkness, the colorful world once again appeared in front of Nangong. It was so beautiful that it reminded Nangong of the fear he felt when he was drifting in the crevice of space. He didn't have the heart to look at the beautiful scenery around him. He only activated the internal force in his body and attracted the surrounding natural energy to gather and condense on Mashiro's body. A thin layer of green light covered Mashiro's body. Mashiro also noticed Nangong's actions. Small dimples appeared on Mashiro's cheeks. Although Nangong was nervously looking at the crevice of space at this moment, he was afraid that an accident would happen. Fortunately, there were no accidents during this space travel. Nangong and Mashiro safely arrived at Woodleaf village. The crevice of space instantly tore open and Nangong and Mashiro's figures appeared from within. Their hands were tightly intertwined at this moment. Nangong and Little Linger noticed the abnormality in the courtyard, so they walked out of the room together. Sister Mashiro. Why are you back? Brother, Nangong walked out from the corner of the house and only saw Mashiro's figure at first. Thus, he began to speak. However, the moment Nangong's figure entered his sight, he was stunned. Nangong used her small hands to cover her mouth, afraid that she would cry out. But the tears at the corner of her eyes still seeped out. As for the young Little Linger, it was even more obvious. Little Ling rushed forward and stood on her tiptoes. She used her weak arms to hug Nangong's waist tightly. Brother Nangong, where did you go? You left for so long, Little Linger missed you so much. I asked Sister Mashiro and Sister Rower where you went, but they didn't tell me. After 3 months, even Sister Mashiro disappeared. Little Linger. Little Linger thought that you all hated Little Linger and didn't want Little Linger anymore. A child's mentality was always fragile. Little Linger lived with Ah Wang for a very long time. When Nangong and Mashiro brought her away from the village, Wang actually secretly gave Little Linger a letter. He repeatedly asked Little Linger to open the letter after reaching a safe place. Little Ling naturally complied with Ah Wang's request. In the days when Nan Gongzhi left, little Linger began to miss Ah Wang. And from Ah Wang's letter, she learned that Ah Wang was dying. For little Linger, Nan Gongzhi, Mashiro, and Nan Gongro were her family after Ah Wang. Little Linger really didn't want to lose any of them. This was also the reason why little Linger was so emotional at this time. Okay, little Linger, don't cry. Big brother is back, right? Nan Gongzhi touched little Linger's head and said gently. N. At this moment, little Linger seemed to find that the way she hugged Nan Gongzhi was a bit ugly, and Mashiro and Nan Gongro were also staring at her at the moment. This made the little girl's face blush, and she quickly let go of Nan Gongzhi's waist. She took a few steps back and wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes with her small hands. Nan Gongro, who saw little Linger had already retreated, also came forward at this moment. This little girl's psychological pressure is really a bit too much recently. Instead of talking about himself, Nan Gongro first talked about little Linger. Yes, I also know that you must be feeling bad in your heart. Nan Gongzhi also put his hand on Nan Gongro's head and gently stroked it. All these years, big brother, haven't you always been like this? During the Shinobi World War, it took him nearly a year to get there. I've long since stopped feeling sad over such things. Hearing Nan Gongro's words, Nan Gongzhi also felt a stab of pain in his heart. In order to establish a foothold in Woodleaf Village, he ignored Nan Gongro for a long time. For a long time, he didn't accompany Nan Gongro for a long time. Don't worry, this time I will apply to the Hokage for an indefinite retirement. I will concentrate on accompanying you. Hearing Nan Gongzhi's words, Nan Gongro's eyes were slightly widened in shock. Big brother, why do you think so? Although after you became a ninja, you didn't have time to accompany me like before. But I can still understand that you like it very much. The life of gratification and revenge is the world that truly belongs to you. After Nan Gongro finished, she stared at Nan Gongzhi's eyes tightly. She hoped that she could see Nan Gongzhi's true meaning. She didn't want Nan Gongzhi to make any decisions that he might regret. Like? If I can choose, I would rather work in the morning and rest in the morning. When I am busy, I will farm, and when I am free, I will drink. I will live a normal life like this. But in this chaotic world, everything is out of my control. I can only force myself to kill people again and again, and violate my bottom line again and again. This time, the Shinobi World War is over. All the promises I made to Rio have been fulfilled, even if I can't live a peaceful life. However, there would be no war for a very, very long time after that. I can also put down the burden on my body. Finally, I can accompany you. Finally, Nan Gongzhi said his thoughts in front of Nan Gongro. Nan Gongro also looked at Nan Gongzhi's eyes during the process, fully convinced that Nan Gongzhi was telling the truth. Since Big Brother has decided, then I will always support any decision you make. Nan Gongro looked at Nan Gongzhi's eyes and said seriously. Nan Gongzhi also gently nodded. Well, if there's anything, we can talk about it later. Mia is back, no matter how troublesome it is, it will eventually be solved. Roar Mimi has to take care of Kiba Hospital's work and worry about Mia's safety. It must be very hard, why don't we have a good rest first? Mashiro saw that the atmosphere between them was very sad, so he took the opportunity to change the topic. He wanted to let them not be obsessed with those troublesome things. Nan Gongzhi also understood Mashiro's meaning and nodded. Mashiro is right, everything has been solved. No matter how troublesome it is in the future, we will share it together. Don't think too much about it today. Let's celebrate and have a meal together that we haven't had for a long time. Nan Gongro also nodded and followed Mashiro and little Linger into the house's kitchen. Not long after, the smell of food floated out of the house. But Nan Gongzhi was sitting in the living room, his brows slightly knitted together. He was playing with his woodleaf forehead protector in his hand. Chapter 97. In fact, Nangongja wasn't very sure that he could reach an agreement with the 3 generations Hokage, who was now in charge of temporarily managing the village, and temporarily give up his identity as a ninja. After all, after the battle between Yondaime and Nine Tails, there was no news about Watergate. And the one who replaced Watergate in Woodleaf was the 3 generations Hokage, Yuan Fei Sasuke. As an outsider who didn't really enter the decision-making level of Woodleaf Village, Nangongja didn't know a lot of things. Although his relationship with Kakashi wasn't bad, a ninja wouldn't reveal some secrets to you just because of a good relationship, right? Early the next morning, Nangongja left home alone and went to the Hokage office building under the Shadow Rock. Compared to the other buildings in Woodleaf Village, the office building wasn't very grand. But perhaps because of the people inside, the more powerful the person, the more inexplicable pressure he would feel when he came to the front of the office building. Nangongja's heavy mood at the moment also became heavier with the pressure of the office building. Knock knock. Nangongja walked to the door of the office building, hesitated for a long time, then stretched out his hand and gently knocked on the ordinary wooden door. It turned out to be Nangong Jounin. The 3 generations Hokage had been lowering his head to deal with a thick pile of documents on the table, and didn't look up to see who came in. But after a long time, no one reported anything to him, so the 3 generations could only look up to see who came. When he looked up, he found that it was Nangongja, so he greeted him. Jiraiya told me before that you went to the gap in space, and it seemed that there was something important to deal with. Now it seems that you have dealt with the things you have to deal with? As the Sandaime spoke, an amiable smile appeared on his slightly aged face. Thank you for your concern, 3 generations Sama, I have dealt with the trivial matters. Nangongja bowed slightly and said to the 3 generations. There are a lot of things that can't be said. In fact, the Woodleaf Village has been studying space ninjutsu for a long time, and the most famous research result is naturally the Flying Thunder God Jutsu, which was invented by the 2nd Hokage and carried forward by Watergate. The 2 Hokages were so keen on such space ninjutsu, coupled with the fact that space ninjutsu has extremely great adaptability and great power. It really made one have to think of ways to remove the mysterious veil covering the truth on the face of the mighty power of space. Nangongja can tear space cracks and enter the gap between space. For a ninja village, this is really a sweet and delicious cake. If he could get a share of it, that would be the best. Nangongja straightened his slightly bowed body and took a few steps forward, looking at the 3 generations Hokage sitting on the chair. The 3 generations also realized that Nangongja seemed to have something to say, so they looked at the Nangongja standing in front of them with a slightly serious expression. So, I don't know what is Nangong Jounin's plan to come to this old man's office this time. Nangongja didn't say anything, he just took out his ninja headband from his back and put it on the desk of the 3 generations. Oh. I don't understand what you mean. Although the 3 generations said that they didn't understand the meaning of Nangongja, the 3 generations Hokage's body already rose a huge momentum. In a few hidden corners, a faint murderous aura began to exude. Needless to say, it was the aura of the members of the Hokage guards who were responsible for protecting the Hokage. They wanted to warn Nangongja. They can kill Nangongja here at any time. I hope to temporarily give up my identity as a ninja. Nangongja didn't pay attention to the murderous aura exerted on him, he still said lightly. Over the years, I have been running around outside. I killed a lot of people, for the benefit of the Woodleaf. I did a lot of things against my conscience. I'm not the only one who knows this, Sandaime, you should also know this. Every organization, it can be said that this is a common problem for everyone. Whenever something is too dangerous, as long as there is a choice, people will choose to die for those who are more estranged from them. Nangongja is such an estranged person for the Woodleaf. Over the years, at least 70% of the missions done by Nangongja were dangerous assassinations. He was injured again and again, and he was in danger again and again. Nangong's impression of the Woodleaf village has dropped again and again. The 3 generations also know this. But the 3 generations didn't expect Nangongzhe to be so straightforward. Since ancient times, when the birds are gone, the hound is cooked. The war between the Woodleaf village and other ninja villages is over, so there will be no huge turmoil. The next thing is naturally to settle the situation. Although I didn't participate in the Battle of the 9 Tails. But occasionally, I found a little clue. Nangongzhe said, his feet began to slowly pace. Obviously, he was slowly relaxing. As long as the 3 generations want to continue to listen to him, then his goal is likely to be achieved. Even an outsider like me knows that the Woodleaf Umbu department is divided into 2 departments. One is the Umbu department directly under the Hokage, and the other is the Root department under the Elders' Council. Where did the Root department go during the Battle of the 9 Tails? The 3 generations listened to Nangongzhe's words, and their aura rose again. These things had been forcefully suppressed by the 3rd generation in the first place. But Nangongzhe said it directly. Obviously, he wanted to rely on this to achieve his goal. But Nangongzhe didn't continue. Instead, he began to talk about another thing. Speaking of the Battle of the 9 Tails, where did the savior of the Woodleaf, the 4th Hokage, go? The news that spread only proved that you and the 4th Hokage worked together with the sealing class to seal the 9 Tails. After that, the 3 generations took up the responsibility of the Hokage again. So, the 4th Hokage doesn't care about 2 possibilities. First, he was seriously injured and hasn't recovered yet. But before that, Tsunade Heim came back to the Woodleaf. If even Tsunade Heim can't cure him, the crisis of the 4th Hokage can be imagined. But after saying this, Nangongzhe shook his head. He overturned his decision again. If the 4th Hokage is seriously injured and dying, then the other ninja villages won't have no news. There have been spies between the 5 major ninja villages. Some things can't be hidden. Since the 4th Hokage is not seriously injured and dying, it can only prove that the 4th Hokage is not in the Woodleaf at the moment. He went out of the village to perform some mission. Chapter 98. The 3 generations watched Nangongzhe talk in front of them. At first, some of Nangongzhe's words were listened to by the 3 generations. But the 3 generations didn't really take it to heart. But when it comes to the whereabouts of Yondaime, Nangongzhe can clearly see that the eyes of the 3 generations are a little different. Although I always knew that Nangong Jannin was an intelligent person, I never thought that you would be so smart. You were able to deduce so much information based on some minor details. The 3 generations said and stood up from his seat. The figure of the 3 generations is still very broad, but the faint hunchback in it can't be hidden. The 3 generations is old, this generation of heroes who have experienced the 2nd Shinobi World War and the 3rd Shinobi World War, is now gradually entering the twilight years. Since you have guessed so much, then I won't hide too many things from you. Yondaime is indeed not in Woodleaf village now, and not only him, but also one of my apprentices, Jiraiya, one of the Sannin also left the village. They went to investigate something together, although I don't know what drove them to leave Woodleaf at such a turbulent time. But as my apprentices and apprentices, I still trust them, so I let them leave the village. I'm very clear about your request. It's just a temporary suspension of all their activities as ninjas. It's just a small matter, after all, even if the Woodleaf village is short of manpower. With or without you, you won't be able to solve any substantial problems. Moreover, the 3rd King Yenluo paused for a moment. Turning around, through the window of the Hokage's office, he looked at the scenery of Woodleaf outside the window. At this moment, the Woodleaf is still early in the morning, and a slight mist covered the Woodleaf, making everything a little hazy. I have something for you to do. The 3 generations didn't continue and instead changed the topic. Since you want to suspend the ninjas' activities, then you can do something for me that should be done. Although the 4th generation head has left the wood leaf, there are still some people in the wood leaf. Although the 3 generations did not say who it was, Nangongzhi already had some guesses. The 4th generation head's wife and children are still in wood leaf. There are some people and forces that I don't trust. So, I hope that during your suspension, you can assist my direct dark group to protect the safety of these 2 people. You are in the light while the dark group is in the dark. He wanted to make sure that nothing would happen to the 2 of them. Do you understand? Nangongzhi looked at the 3 generations. Originally, Nangongzhi did not intend to agree to the 3 generations' conditions. But looking at the face of the 3 generations, he also remembered how Watergate took care of him in the past. Nangongzhi also nodded slightly. The relationship between the 4th generation and me is not bad, and Shina Kushina-sama also has some relationship with me. Since you want me to protect the 2 of them, then I will naturally not shirk my responsibility. The 3 generations supported Nangongzhi's words, and his heart was also relieved. Since the 9 tails attacked the village, under the huge pool of wood leaf, there began to be undercurrents. He will also be constantly involved in it, whether it is Naruto Komatsu or Shina Kushina. He may not have much time to protect them in all aspects in the future. It is actually a good idea to let Nangongzhi, an outsider, take care of them. The 3 generations walked in front of Nangongzhi, reached out and picked up the forehead protector that Nangongzhi just put on the table. It was placed in Nangongzhi's hand. As long as you are a woodleaf ninja, you will be a woodleaf ninja for the rest of your life. You just need to take care of the safety of Shina Kushina and her son, and the rest of the troublesome things will naturally be dealt with by me. Nangongzhi looked at the 3 generations putting the forehead protector in his hand, and could only put away the forehead protector that he just took out not long ago. He slightly bowed and walked out of the office of the 3 generations. When Nangongzhi was about to close the door of the office of the 3 generations, the 3 generations' voice sounded in his ears. It's enough to play this kind of trick once, there are many people who are different from me. Anyone who sees through a little of my secrets will not be left alive. There is no need to be cautious in the future. What you should say, what you shouldn't say, weigh it in your heart. The words of the 3 generations were like a heavy hammer, smashing Nangongzhi's head fiercely. During this time, he has been doing all kinds of training with the banishment in the spiritual space, and slowly his whole person became a bit more straightforward. Just like this conversation with the Sandaime, he had almost thrown out all of his trump cards in one go. Although it can be said that he has the upper hand for a while, but thinking about it carefully. If the 3 generations is not a person who can patiently listen to what he has to say, then what kind of situation will Nangongzhi be in now? I've learned, I will pay more attention in the future. Nangongzhi is also open-minded, straightforwardly admitting his shortcomings, and by the way, he also thanked the 3 generations. As long as you can protect Shina Kushina and Naruto well, what I said is not in vain. The 3 generations waved his hand, it was a dismissal order. Nangongzhi also walked out of the Hokage's office building. The 3 generations looked at the figure of Nangongzhi leaving downstairs, and couldn't help but mutter to himself. Danzo. Uchiha, and that mysterious organization. I don't know how much chaos will happen in the future. I'm old, I can only try my best to ensure that the wood leaf won't be destroyed in these waves when I'm still alive, but if I'm not here anymore, I can only rely on Watergate, Jiraiya, and other juniors. This chaotic world, when will it truly end? The question of the 3 generations, he didn't know whether it was for himself, for the wood leaf, for the next generation of ninjas, or for this world. The complex mood of the 3 generations, Nangongzhi can't understand. Nangongzhi's mood at the moment is really good. Before coming to the 3 generations, he had already planned to hand over some information about the realm and more, but he didn't expect it to be so smooth. Although it didn't achieve the greatest effect he had expected, it was still not bad. Nangongja felt very satisfied at the moment, and even his steps were a little cheerful. He only felt the wind under his feet, and he wanted to go home and tell Nangongro the good news. But the undercurrent of the wood leaf is aimed at everyone who lives in the wood leaf. Nangongja wants to get out. Can he really do it? Chapter 99. Ah! Isn't this Nangong Jun? Nangongja was walking home when he heard a familiar voice behind him. Turning his head, he saw Yichui, who was wearing casual clothes, standing behind him. When he and his sister first came to Woodleaf Village, they received a lot of care from Yichui. But since Yichui got married, Nangongja didn't see Yichui much. In addition, all kinds of things have been bothering him during this period of time. Nangongja didn't have much time to visit those friends of the past. Speaking of which, Nangongja finally got such a chance to be relatively free. It's also a good choice to visit those who helped him in the past, isn't it? Yabuki? Are you out to buy groceries? Nangongja looked at Yichui and greeted her. Then he saw the small basket in Yichui's hand, so he asked casually. Yes, after I asked my husband to take care of Xiaoying. I came out to get some fresh air and buy groceries. After all these years, fine lines appeared on Yichui's face. But the fine lines couldn't hide the bright color of happiness on her face. Speaking of which, I often see Ro recently. As for you, I don't know where you went. Yichui said with a look of disdain on her face. You ninjas always don't go home. You don't know, my husband, he. Then. Yichui and Nangongja scolded Haruno Chunin for almost 10 minutes. But are you sure this isn't a flash bomb? Nangongja felt that his eyes were about to be blinded by the flash. I still have something to find Ro. How about? Nangongja finally found an opportunity to take advantage of Ye's tiredness. He casually made up a reason to not be blinded by Yichui's flash bomb. Okay, then we'll talk at night. Yichui smiled and agreed. But Nangongja felt that something was wrong. After all, when did the two of us really meet at night? As if seeing the doubt in Nangongja's eyes, Yichui immediately said, Didn't little sister Roer tell you? Yesterday, little sister Roer invited us to your house. She said that you haven't been back for too long. It's not easy to come back, so I decided to call some old friends over to celebrate. Nangongja was dumbfounded when he heard that. She was indeed his sister. How could these kinds of things be linked together? How could that be? I was just afraid that you would forget, Yabuki. So I'm just reminding you tactfully. Nangongja forced himself to say this in order to save some face for himself. But Yichui and Nangongja had known each other for a long time, so such a small thing could naturally be seen. You're still pretending with me. Isn't it just little sister Roer hiding it from you? Yichui knocked on Nangongja's head, but then she held her chin and whispered slightly, Little sister Roer didn't tell you, is it a surprise? Aya, if I say it like this, will little sister Roer blame me? Looking at Yichui who was whispering in front of him, Nangongja was speechless for a moment. Please, I'm a ninja. Although I'm not a traditional ninja who practices chakra, I'm still very smart. Even if you whisper, I can still hear you, okay? It's okay. Ro will definitely not be obedient to you, Yabuki. Nangongja comforted Yichui who was standing in front of him. Yichui nodded slightly, indicating that she thought so too. But Nangongja's next sentence made Yichui go crazy. After all, when she told you, Yabuki, she had to be prepared for you to leak it to me. After listening to Nangongja's words, Yichui instantly raised the basket in her hand and threw it at Nangongja. Meanwhile, Nangongja was also flustered as he caught the basket that Yabo had thrown at him. You really haven't changed at all. You've grown a lot, but your personality is still so bad. Yichui said, but there was no anger in her eyes. Instead, there was a little bit of nostalgia. At that time, she was very young, and Nan Gongzhi was just a little kid. That was how they joked around with each other. How long had it been, and the young boy of the past had become a handsome young man. And she was already a wife, and even the mother of a child. Time really flies, Ye Chui couldn't help but sigh. Although time has changed, some things will not change. The feelings between people, no matter how time washes away, will still stay deep in everyone's heart. Nan Gongzhi seemed to see that Ye Chui was a little sad, so he walked forward and handed the basket in his hand to Ye Chui. He patted the shoulder of the little sister who was originally taller than him. I didn't expect such words to come out of your mouth at all. After listening to Nan Gongzhi's words, Ye Chui raised her head and looked at Nan Gongzhi, who was standing beside her with a little surprise. I say. What kind of image do I have in front of you? Nan Gongzhi said with a little embarrassment. You? In my eyes, you are trying your best to pretend to be a mature and astute person, but you can't let go of your mental cleanliness at all. He's a very, very tired person. Ye Chui said, but Nan Gongzhi, who was standing next to her, was a little stunned. After being stunned for a long time, he could only shake his head and laugh at himself. I didn't expect that Yabuki could see through me so much. It seems that a person like me is really not suitable to be a real ninja. Even Yabuki can easily see through me. Ye Chui was a little indifferent, shook her head and wanted to rub Nan Gongzhi's head like before. But she found that she was a little short, so she could only tiptoe slightly and try to reach out and touch Nan Gongzhi's head. What's wrong with it? A qualified ninja means that he will have some shortcomings in human nature. Being a complete person was much better than being a complete tool, right? If I can choose, I would rather let Sakura follow a master like you. Nan Gongzhi hasn't been touched for a long time. When he was touched by Ye Chui, he was a little shy, but Ye Chui's words went into Nan Gongzhi's heart. Indeed, there are many excellent ninjas among the people Nan Gongzhi came in contact with. However, Nan Gongzhi always felt that there was something strange about these people. Listening to Ye Chui's words, Nan Gongzhi seemed to have been enlightened. Nan Gongzhi understood what was going on with these people. Chapter 100. After bidding farewell to Ye Chui, Nan Gongzhi was still thinking. It's not only about himself, but also about all ninjas in the world. In the written history of the ninja world, most of the time there were large and small wars. Countless ninjas were trained, but they were also killed by the meat grinder of war one after another. After so many years, ninjutsu, about the art of attack, can be said to be flourishing in the ninja world. But what about the people? It's still in a relatively low-level state. It's still a single family farming a few acres of thin land. Nan Gongzhi once lived in a village under wood leaf for a long time. The farmers there were still facing the yellow soil with their backs to the sky. Their hard work every day might have turned into nothing because of God's displeasure. As for ninjas? Indeed, ninjas can help farmers flatten the land and irrigate crops. But the cost of hiring a ninja is enough for an ordinary family to eat and wear for half a year. How can the poor farmers have so much money to hire ninjas to help them grow crops? Needless to say, most ninjas have bad tempers, and if they don't take care of them well, they may lose their lives. The only people who truly understand the convenience brought to their lives by ninjas are those high-ranking officials, dignitaries, and wealthy merchants. Oni-san, why are you standing at the door? Just when Nan Gongzhi was thinking, a familiar voice came to his ear. Without guessing, it's naturally his sister Nan Gongro. Looking up again, the door of his home is in front of him. What, are you done with Kiba Hospital? Seeing Nan Gongro standing behind him, Nan Gongzhi asked casually. I'm recently in charge of the inpatient department, and I just changed shifts. I came back first. By the way, I have something to tell you. Nan Gongro slightly explained the reason why she came home so early, and somewhat excitedly said to Nan Gongzhi. You called our old friend to come home, right? Nangongja looked at the little girl's appearance and knew what she wanted to say. The little girl was also a bit confused. She obviously didn't say these things to her brother. How did her brother know? Nangongja looked at Nangong-ro standing in front of him with a slightly dazed look, stretched out his hand and knocked Nangong-ro's head, and then said, I just saw Yabuki on the way back, and chatted for a while. She told me everything. After listening to Nangongja's words, Nangong-ro's face was not surprised, only regret. I knew that I couldn't tell Yabuki so early. If something is known by Yabuki, it won't be hidden for long. If Yu was here, who knows what she would say about these two siblings. The words she said were actually the same. Well, don't say that about Yabuki. Why are you still standing here? Hurry up and come in. Nangongja didn't wait for his sister's reaction, and took her hand and walked into his house. Huh? You two came back together? Seeing Nangongja and Nangong-ro come back together, Mashiro looked at the two siblings with some surprise. After all, Nangong-ro is going to work in Kiba Hospital, and Nangongja said this morning that he had to go to Hokage's office to do something. The two of them coming home together is indeed a relatively small thing. I just saw a brother in a daze at the door, so I came in together. Nangong-ro said, but then seemed to think of something. Brother, how's the thing you're going to do? Nangongja looked at his sister helplessly. After all, this matter is quite troublesome. His sister knows what's going on, but she doesn't care about it, which makes Nangongja feel very helpless. Thing? Mashiro actually saw Nangongja get up early in the morning, and knew that Nangongja must have something important to do. But looking at Nangongja's slightly frowned brows, he didn't ask in detail. Since Nangongja is now back, he naturally has to ask to satisfy his curiosity. It's nothing. 3 generations has promised me that I can stop my ninja work indefinitely. But they also asked me to help take care of Shina Kushina and her child. Nangong-ro nodded, and then said, since Nine Tails attacked the village, Tsunade-sama has cured Sinai Q-san's injury, but Sinai Q-san hasn't come to Kiba Hospital to work. I'm also a little worried about Sinai Q-san since 3 generations asked us to take care of Sinai Q-san. So naturally, it's not good to refuse. Speaking of which, Nangongja turned his head to look at Mashiro. Do you know that Ruru has taken a lot of work for you? Work? Mashiro was also a little confused, and didn't know what Nangongja was talking about. Sure enough, this girl didn't even tell Mashiro to give me a surprise. With the little girl alone, she naturally can't cook so many dishes with so many old friends. In the end, I still have to trouble Mashiro, and the little girl didn't even tell Mashiro this. Isn't it because she's afraid that Mashiro will expose this matter to me? The little girl was also a little panicked. Mashiro-san, it's like this. Because brother hasn't come back for a long time, this time he will stay at home for a long time. So I thought of inviting all the friends who helped me and my brother to the house to have a meal together. After listening to Nangong-ro's explanation, Mashiro understood what Nangong-ro wanted to do. He felt that it was acceptable, so he nodded. But then he thought of something. When did you arrange it? Let me have time to prepare. Nangong-ro and Shun-jia's little faces turned red. Mashiro knew that things were going to be bad. Tonight. Looking at the clock hanging on the wall, Mashiro only felt that he was in a bad mood. According to Nangongja and Nangong-ro's meaning, there will be a lot of people coming. But now it's only 7 or 8 hours until dinner time. The preparation was a little rushed. After all, most Japanese people have a system of sharing food when they eat. Everyone has their own table. In this way, the preparation will be very cumbersome. Okay, there's still some time. I'll help too. Nangongja rubbed his sister's head, trying to cheer her up. Okay, then let's hurry up and prepare together. Nangong-ro nodded and agreed. Although they looked a little bitter, being able to do all kinds of trivial things together was the most precious gift for them, which they would not allow anyone to take away. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.